the Cardcaptor Wizard of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 376. What about my soul, Dumbledore? A simple word, but at this moment it became extremely heavy. It was everything about a person, including his life and soul. However, what made people feel even more depressed was that everyone knew. Later, Lily still did not escape. She and Harry's father died on that day. Only Harry survived and became the boy who survived as expected. The scene changed again, and it was the moment when Lily died under the killing curse. Professor Snape was heartbroken and even a little self-destructive. When Professor Dumbledore asked him to protect Harry, he thought it was meaningless. Lily was dead, but Professor Dumbledore convinced Professor Snape with one sentence: he has the same eyes as hers. For this sentence, for those green eyes, Professor Snape agreed to protect Harry, but he asked Professor Dumbledore to keep silent about it as time passed. Scenes after Harry entered school, scenes that Harry or anyone else had never known, flashed on the screen. He is just like his father, Professor Snape's voice sounded lazy, arrogant, mediocre. However, as Professor Snape evaluated Harry, Professor Snape in the picture had been secretly protecting Harry, again and again, year after year, and Harry knew nothing about it. When Professor Snape looked at Harry, he was always looking into his eyes. In the past, Harry thought he was reading his memories and thoughts, but now Harry knew that he was looking at the same eyes as his mother. When the flickering picture stabilized again, Professor Snape was talking to Professor Dumbledore. As Professor Snape scolded, everyone knew that Professor Dumbledore was injured by the curse on a ring. Even with Professor Snape's treatment, one of his hands became a little charred, and he had less than a year left to live. The audience who had watched the previous movies understood after seeing the ring that it was one of the Horcruxes found by Professor Dumbledore. Seeing this, some viewers looked enlightened. No wonder Professor Dumbledore's hand turned black in a previous plot, and the newspaper also analyzed it. Now the mystery has finally been solved. Some viewers couldn't help but ponder why Professor Dumbledore wore the Horcrux ring, and even said the temptation is too great. Indeed, the previous plot let everyone know that Horcruxes have the power to seduce people, but that's Professor Dumbledore. Although everyone knows that Professor Dumbledore is not a perfect saint at this point in the movie, he has directly or indirectly caused the death of his sister in the melee, and he has also asked Professor Snape for compensation for Lily's safety. But no one can question Professor Dumbledore's strength. What kind of temptation can shake his heart? Professor Dumbledore closed his eyes helplessly. Even if Adam had solved the hidden danger of the Horcrux, he couldn't resist the temptation. If it was a Horcrux, he would ignore the curse on it and wear it directly. It's probably not unreasonable, right? In the movie, Professor Dumbledore did not show any fear or other emotions after knowing that he was running out of time. Instead, he began to tell Professor Snape what to do next. He knew that Draco was sent by Voldemort to kill him, and he hoped that Professor Snape would be the one to kill him. According to Professor Dumbledore, I don't want that child's soul to be torn apart because of me. In other words, killing Professor Dumbledore would completely deprive Draco of the possibility of being redeemed, and thus lead him to a road of no return destined to fall into the abyss. Then what about my soul, Dumbledore? Professor Snape's silent words hit almost every audience member's heart. What about mine? When Professor Snape asked Professor Dumbledore to swear to keep silent about his actions in protecting Harry, Professor Dumbledore asked him if he was determined to bury his best side deep in his heart, and if he killed Professor Dumbledore again, then Severus Snape would completely become an out-and-out villain in the eyes of the world. Even if he was not so in essence at this moment, everyone seemed to see Professor Snape sinking into the bottomless quagmire with a calm face, and he did not struggle, but just asked Professor Dumbledore, standing on the edge of the quagmire, this question lightly. In this question, Professor Snape did not mean to refuse. He just wanted to know, this is Draco's redemption, so where is his redemption? Seeing this, Yug blinked in confusion. For the soul torn into pieces, he did not think that this was a metaphor for life and redemption. His beliefs never wavered, and he would not think about whether his actions would make him regret it. He only did what he thought he should do at the time, and his strength often supported him to do so. As such a decent person, he had some difficulty empathizing with this kind of forced missteps. So Yug thought that what Professor Dumbledore said in the movie was just a simple soul splitting. Voldemort and Professor Slughorn mentioned in their conversation when they were students that killing someone would split a person's soul. So the question is, killing a person will split the soul into pieces. Let's just assume that killing a person will split the soul in half. Then whose soul should have been split into pieces that are not much bigger than sand? Could it be that ancient magic saved his soul from splitting? After thinking for a while, Yoder finally decided that this should be just fiction in the movie and should not be taken seriously. Just like the prototype of the gloomy Professor Snape in the movie was actually a gentle and cheerful gentleman, Adam couldn't help but twitch his eyes when he saw this, and his immersion was instantly destroyed. Well, you are indeed a decent person, it's just that this righteousness may even be a little evil in the eyes of others. You can run up and down for your classmates' difficulties, help strangers with their troubles, and use the unforgivable curse on dark wizards and kill all the goblins. Adam rolled his eyes and stopped looking at him, turning to look at the performance of others. After confirming that Professor Snape would be the one who would eventually kill him, Professor Dumbledore smiled with satisfaction, and then said to Professor Snape, "After my death, at a certain moment, Voldemort will fall into an unprecedented weakness, and he will always keep the big snake with him, protecting it like his own life." The audience knew what Professor Dumbledore was referring to, and it was obviously when Harry destroyed the other Horcruxes in the movie. As Professor Dumbledore expected, when the Golden Cup was destroyed, Voldemort was so nervous that he kept Nagini with him, and then hurried away with Nagini. He didn't even trust the Death Eaters who followed him. Just when everyone couldn't help but sigh at Professor Dumbledore's perfect plan again, Professor Dumbledore continued, "When that time comes, I want you to tell Harry one thing." Chapter 377. He had to die. Hearing this, Harry forced himself not to think about the explosive amount of information in front of him, and concentrate on the following content. Obviously, now is the time for Professor Dumbledore to ask Professor Snape to tell him about this matter. This matter is undoubtedly crucial, and perhaps there will be information he wants to know, the information that Professor Dumbledore was unwilling to tell him in reality, and the content written down did not disappoint Harry, and even exceeded the limit of his imagination. "I want you to tell him that when Voldemort went to Godric's Hollow to kill him that day, the killing curse rebounded because of the protective magic left on him by Lily." Professor Dumbledore looked at Professor Snape and slowly began to tell this secret. At that time, a piece of soul fragment that Voldemort split because of killing Lily, because Voldemort was backlashed by the killing curse and lost control, attached to the only living life in the room at that time. Hearing this, Harry couldn't help but widen his eyes. What does Professor Dumbledore mean by these? Could it be that this is why Harry, who is not a descendant of Slytherin, has Parseltongue? Why Harry's thoughts can be connected to Voldemort to a certain extent? Why Harry can sense the Horcruxes? Professor Dumbledore looked at Professor Snape with a sad expression, and told Harry the truth that shocked his heart. Harry is a Horcrux created by Voldemort accidentally, so Professor Snape's breathing could not help but stagnate. By then, Harry will also die. To destroy Voldemort, all Horcruxes must be destroyed. To destroy Horcruxes made of living things, of course, there is only one way to kill him. Professor Dumbledore avoided Professor Snape's gaze, nodded, and said softly, "I think so. He must die." As soon as these words came out, a sound of inhalation rang out in the screening room, accompanied by suppressed exclamations. Before Professor Dumbledore told the truth, no one had ever guessed in this direction, even though Harry had shown the ability of Parseltongue before. After all, strictly speaking, wizards in the entire British wizarding world have blood relations, whether distant or close. Potter is also one of the sacred 28 families, so it is not surprising that he has Slytherin blood. As for being able to connect to Voldemort's mind, some people have suggested that there may be other hidden reasons. At present, there is no reasonable reason, but who would have thought that Harry would be Voldemort's Horcrux? When everyone slowly accepted this shocking news, a question emerged in everyone's mind, that is, Voldemort is dead now, so it stands to reason that Harry's Horcrux should also be destroyed. So the identity of Harry's Horcrux is just a fiction in the movie. Harry can ignore the curiosity of others, but he can't ignore Ron and Hermione, and he is also curious about it. After some recollection, Harry murmured, "Wait, I may have died once, on the day Voldemort was destroyed. At that time, Voldemort used the killing curse on him, and he fainted after being hit. After waking up, he found that he was fine, so he thought that Voldemort didn't really hide him at that time, so Voldemort did kill him at that time. Then why is he still alive?" Seeing Harry stop talking halfway through his words, Ron and Hermione said that their fists wanted to make close contact with Harry's face. "What do you mean by possible death? Harry, do you know what you are talking about? Don't keep it a secret." However, Harry did not answer them. On the one hand, he was also confused, and on the other hand, The movie would not stop playing because of his thinking, and the plot continued. Professor Snape, who got the truth from Professor Dumbledore, was also shocked. Professor Dumbledore had spent so much effort to protect Harry before, just to let Harry die in the end to destroy Voldemort. What's the difference between this and raising a pig and slaughtering it when the time comes? Looking at the emotional Professor Snape, Professor Dumbledore avoided the so-called raising pigs and asked Professor Snape when he started to care about Harry. Care? About him, Professor? Snape asked softly, and then cast the Patronus charm. A doe lightly jumped out of the tip of Professor Snape's wand, landed on the ground, and jumped out of the window. Isn't that, Ron? Couldn't help but widen his eyes and pushed Harry. Harry, the mysterious man who led the way for us and gave us the sword of Gryffindor. But Harry didn't respond to Ron's words. He didn't have the extra energy to pay attention to Ron now in the movie. Professor Dumbledore stared at the Patronus with wide eyes, and only turned to look at Professor Snape after the doe disappeared in the headmaster's office. The camera turned back, and I don't know when. Professor Snape's eyes were full of tears. Lily, Professor Dumbledore couldn't help but whispered, after so long, is your Patronus still like this? It's always been like this, Professor. Snape refuted Professor Dumbledore's words. His Patronus has always been a doe like Lily. Almost all of his happy memories come from Lily, and his love for Lily has never changed. Professor Dumbledore blinked, reaffirmed that Professor Snape was trustworthy, and told him the follow-up arrangements, one by one, from the actions of the 7 Potters to the later handing over of the Sword of Gryffindor to them, and using the merits he made in front of Voldemort during this period to gain Voldemort's trust, becoming the person among the Death Eaters who controlled Hogwarts and secretly protecting the students of Hogwarts. It turned out that there was a shadow protecting Harry from beginning to end, arranging the way forward for him step by step, a road to death. When he raised his head from the pensieve, the face of Harry in the movie was the same as that of Harry in reality. Is this Professor Snape's life, with all kinds of thoughts entangled and intertwined? Harry staggered and sat down on a chair in the principal's office. He opened his mouth to say something, but found that he couldn't say anything and didn't know where to start. Professor Snape's life can be described as a deep and quiet stream. Before today, no one knew what kind of soul was under his calm face, but Harry didn't have so much time to comment on it now. Time was still passing, and Voldemort only gave him an hour. He originally thought that this memory would be the winning secret of defeating Voldemort left to him by Professor Dumbledore, who had always planned everything, but in the end he got the fate of having to die looking at himself in the movie. Who didn't know what he was thinking? Harry's lips trembled a little. Boom. Boom boom boom. The sound of the heartbeat gradually sounded, from the initial inaudible to the surgeon beating, and Harry stood up from the chair. At this time, the scene on the screen began to flash back, as if hinting at Harry's psychological activities. Those classmates, friends, and elders who were once familiar, some of them fell in the ruins in a blink of an eye, some were seriously injured when they met again, and some. He didn't even know whether the other party was dead or alive until now. After all, he had been rushing all the way, rushing to destroy the Horcruxes, and it had not even been a full day since he went to Bellatrix's vault to look for the Horcruxes. Harry took out the invisibility cloak and put it on, took a step, opened the door of the headmaster's office, and slowly walked downstairs. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 378. Why are there 2 Deathly Hallows? The theater was completely silent. Everyone held their breath and watched the boy on the screen wearing the invisible cloak and walking down the stairs step by step. No, maybe it should be called a man. Harry in the movie has already become an adult, but he has only just become an adult at this age. Harry learned his most desperate fate. He had to die at the hands of Voldemort. However, what was even more heartbreaking was that he accepted this fate. The flashback and heartbeat just now clearly showed Harry's decision. He walked through the stairs and hall of Hogwarts wearing the invisible cloak, slowly walking towards the end of his destiny. Those familiar people passed by him, and he looked at them as if he was looking at people from another world. Oh, no, MRS. Molly covered her mouth, and a crying voice leaked out from her fingers. Suddenly, Harry in the movie seemed to have heard it, stopped and changed direction. Of this, when everyone couldn't help but raise doubts in their eyes, Harry walked behind Neville and said, Neville, you have to know that Harry is wearing an invisible cloak now. And this shout almost scared Neville to death. The rare joke in the depressing atmosphere did not make everyone laugh, but it must be said that it did make everyone's extremely heavy mood relax a little. Revealing his figure from under the invisible cloak, Harry told the reason why he stopped to find Neville. In addition to him, Voldemort's Horcrux is still Nagini. After he dies, someone must destroy Nagini so that everyone can kill Voldemort. Ron and Hermione are on their way to find Nagini, but if they are not free. Instinctively, he did not think about the worst possible scenario, but the future of the wizarding world could not bet on whether Hermione and Ron could succeed. Harry's words changed, and then he continued, "And you have another chance." Neville understood the unfinished meaning of Harry's words. "I want to kill the snake." "Yes," Harry nodded. "Kill the snake," nodding to Neville a few times. Harry pursed his lips and put on the invisibility cloak again. This time, his steps were no longer hesitant, deathly. "Hallows, Professor." Dumbledore suddenly spoke. He closed his eyes, raised his hand and pinched his sore nose. No wonder the two movies have the same name, because the names of the Boy Who Lived series are the same with only a number to distinguish them. Everyone habitually uses the name of the commemorative card as the second name of the movie. The names of the previous 6 movies are all different, except for the last 2 movies, which have the same name, but with a distinction between the upper and lower parts. This has caused a lot of heated discussion before. After all, there is no novel here, so everyone is naturally curious about why it is named like this according to the previous naming method. Each name before was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows followed by a noun that runs through the movie. For example, the Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, Goblet of Fire, etc. Naturally, everyone will guess that the reason for this naming is that the Deathly Hallows runs through the last 2 movies, but this can't help but cause a rebuttal. That is, can't you pick a second noun from the things that run through the movie? But now Professor Dumbledore understands that these 2 movies do use the Deathly Hallows, and there is no second noun that can replace it. There is no doubt that the clue that guides Harry and his friends to find the Horcrux is the symbol of the Deathly Hallows, and the Deathly Hallows runs through almost the entire movie. And this movie, it seems that the important theme of the movie is Voldemort's invasion. But in fact the hidden and running thread will still be the Deathly Hallows. First of all, the Elder Wand, because it only follows the one who defeated its original owner. In the movie, Professor Dumbledore arranged for Professor Snape to kill him, and Voldemort killed Professor Snape because of this. But don't forget what the ending of the eldest of the 3 brothers and the first owner of the Elder Wand in the story of the Deathly Hallows was. After he obtained the invincible Elder Wand, he was indeed extremely powerful and thought he could even defeat death with it, but he was eventually cut in the neck in his sleep, and Harry, who had tried hard to destroy the Horcrux before, chose to wear the invisibility cloak and calmly walk towards his own death after knowing his fate, which just coincided with the attitude of the third brother of the 3 brothers towards death. Face it, when death should come from this, the ending of the 2 is naturally not difficult to guess, although it is known that the story told in Adam's movie is not a simple fiction. Professor Dumbledore does not think that Adam will choose a story in which Voldemort succeeds and they all fail and die to show everyone. If I am not mistaken, the next thing should be the appearance of the Resurrection Stone, right? Professor Dumbledore opened his eyes and looked at the screen. Walking into the Forbidden Forest alone, Harry suddenly seemed to remember something and took out a relic left to him by Professor Dumbledore, the Golden Snitch. The Golden Snitch has the ability to remember how it was caught and who caught it. Grimgor thought that the Golden Snitch would change when he got it, but the result disappointed him. It's not that the snitch has no secrets, but that Harry used his mouth instead of his hands to catch it. Harry knew this at the time, but it was impossible for him to check the snitch's secrets in front of Scrimgeour afterwards. Harry tried with his mouth, but only one sentence appeared on the snitch: "I will open it at the end, so now is the time, right?" Seeing the words on it, everyone also remembered the snitch. "I'm ready to die, pudding." The snitch to his lips, Harry whispered with a slight cracking sound. Harry moved the snitch away and saw a crack on it, revealing a cracked stone, and on the stone, the symbol of the Deathly Hallows was clearly visible. There is no doubt that this stone, the stone that was originally on the ring and bewitched Professor Dumbledore's heart, is the Resurrection Stone. Everyone suddenly realized what was so tempting for Professor Dumbledore, that he suffered the Horcrux curse. It was his desire to see his dead family again. Resurrection Stone. Harry also recognized the stone. He reached out and grabbed it. He turned it 3 times in his palm. As described in the story of the 3 brothers, the legend says that the Resurrection Stone cannot really bring people back to life, but Harry doesn't care about that. He doesn't want to revive anyone. He just wants to see them again before he dies. Chapter 379. The Boy Who Lived died? As Harry turned the resurrection stone 3 times, translucent figures came out from the depths of the Forbidden Forest. Harry saw his parents, as well as Sirius and Lupin. Although Sirius and Lupin were both younger than he remembered looking at the people who had been away for a long time, Harry couldn't help blurting out a somewhat childish question, "Does death hurt?" After speaking, Harry opened his mouth, as if he wanted to swallow what he just said, but the figures in front of him obviously didn't want to laugh at him, but instead thought that Harry was brave in the end. Sirius answered Harry's question, "Don't worry, it doesn't hurt at all. It's just like falling asleep. No, it's faster than that. Voldemort will not think of torturing you this time. You have already made him afraid." Lupin then said, "He will definitely win quickly this time." Although it was said that Voldemort would kill him neatly, Harry was still comforted looking at the figures around him. Harry spoke softly, "Will you stay with me? We never left you." Lily looked at him tenderly. "We will be with you until the end." James stood next to Lily and looked at him with relief. Harry nodded and suddenly remembered something. "Will he see you?" This. Of course he was referring to Voldemort. "What? He can't see. We are a part of you. We are here." Sirius raised his hand and pointed at Harry's chest. "What the resurrection stone summons is not the soul of the deceased, but a more illusory existence based on the memory of the deceased of the owner of the resurrection stone." Harry finally relaxed and walked forward step by step towards the direction where Voldemort was waiting for him. "Oh my God, I don't dare to look at it. Tell me when the results finally come out." Ron covered his eyes with his hands, but couldn't help but look out from between his fingers. "Harry, won't I?" Hermione shook her head, but her words were not so sure. "Don't forget, the person who collects the Deathly Hallows can become the Master of Death. Harry is now the Master of 3 Deathly Hallows, isn't he?" "Yeah, you're right." No matter how much Hermione believed it, Hermione's statement was still very convincing, and both Ron and Harry couldn't help but nodded. However, after Harry met Voldemort, there was no magical reversal as everyone expected. Harry didn't even resist and faced Voldemort's death curse head-on. At that moment, everyone's brain stopped for a second. The boy who lived is dead. But then everyone realized that although this result was unacceptable, it was actually in line with the development of the plot. Yes, Harry came here determined to die. As a Horcrux, he had to die, so why would he resist in vain? When white light filled the entire screen, suppressed cries rang out in the screening room. Looking at the screen, Harry was stunned for a moment and sighed sadly. What on earth was he expecting? Are you looking forward to pulling out your wand and having a fierce duel with Voldemort like Professor Dumbledore? However, as the white light slowly weakened and finally stopped at a certain intensity, everyone could vaguely tell that the scene on the screen was no longer the Forbidden Forest, but a hall with a glass dome. Please forgive everyone for using vague as a prefix to describe the scene. It is true that the previous movies were extremely dark, and suddenly the brightness increased so much that it was difficult to see clearly. Everyone blinked and adjusted to the brightness of the screen, and suddenly found that the person standing on the screen was Harry, who had just been hit by the death curse. So, the latter part of the movie is about Harry's experience in the afterlife. Although this idea is a bit outrageous, many viewers couldn't help but believe it after the baby who looked very similar to Voldemort and Professor Dumbledore appeared. The former is the soul fragment of Voldemort who is planned to be killed with Harry, and the latter is Professor Dumbledore, who has long been confirmed to be dead. Even the two Harrys agreed that the Harry in the movie was dead. "But I don't think you're dead yet, Harry." Facing Professor Dumbledore's words, Harry was stunned, especially Harry in reality not dead. Then Professor Dumbledore, "Aren't you dead too?" So Professor Dumbledore actually faked his death before. Unknown to Harry in real life, there were some speculations about deceiving his master and destroying his ancestors. Professor Dumbledore in the movie finally told Harry the truth at the same time. This is what Harry wants to see in the movie. What secrets are there between him and Voldemort? As Professor Dumbledore narrated, Harry in the movie and the audience in real life gradually understood the truth, and at the same time, they became increasingly shocked. Originally, everyone thought that the connection between Voldemort and Harry was only the tragedy when Harry not only did not die under Voldemort's death curse, but almost killed Voldemort later. Everyone learned that there was actually a prophecy in it. And it was precisely because of the prophecy that Voldemort wanted to kill Harry's family. Then everyone learned that Voldemort and Harry's wands were twin wands. At that time, some people already lamented the deep entanglement between Harry and Voldemort, but looking back now, what was the news that was originally revealed? In addition to those relationships, in this movie, Everyone first learned that Harry had soul fragments that Voldemort unconsciously attached to him, so the two souls were connected then. In Professor Dumbledore's current explanation, everyone learned that Voldemort took Harry's blood when he still had the protective magic left by Lily to revive him, which also connected the two bodies. This connection will allow the protective magic that should have disappeared after Harry became an adult to continue to take effect. It is known that this protective magic will protect Harry from death, and as long as this connection continues, the protective magic will not disappear, so the offensive and defensive forces suddenly changed. Voldemort wants to kill Harry, so he must kill himself first at this moment. It is just like that moment, of course. This protective magic is not without any flaws, because this connection depends on Voldemort, so Harry must be with Voldemort to take effect. Just like Harry must be with his blood relatives before he becomes an adult to take effect. This is why Professor Dumbledore asked Professor Snape to pass on the message to Harry, saying that Voldemort must kill Harry himself. Fortunately, Voldemort was obsessed with Harry, so Harry and Professor Snape didn't need to worry about this. The Death Eaters knew that Voldemort had repeatedly emphasized that he would kill Harry himself, which made the other Death Eaters dare not kill Harry when they caught him. When Harry knew this, he was no less shocked than the audience. He looked at Professor Dumbledore. "So, you knew this a long time ago?" "I guessed, Professor." Dumbledore smiled. Harry in the movie U0026, Harry in reality? Chapter 380. This is such a wonderful story. Professor Dumbledore in real life couldn't help but cough softly when he saw this. He couldn't really say that he was sure of this. After all, after Voldemort took Harry's blood and resurrected, he could touch Harry. Although it stands to reason that the strengthened connection can indeed allow the protective magic to continue, but in the final analysis, the only way to truly confirm whether the protective magic is still there is that Voldemort gives Harry an Avada. There is no way to experiment in advance, so in addition to this speculation, which is highly likely but ultimately just a guess, Professor Dumbledore also made some other preparations. It is worth mentioning that Professor Dumbledore's preparations did not actually include the ownership of the Elder Wand, which was something he did not expect. But at the same time, this accident was also a pity. The story of the three brothers has been passed down to this day, and there may not be many people who owned 3 Deathly Hallows at the same time. It is even uncertain whether there were such people before this century, but in this century, 2 of them appeared. Professor Dumbledore paused for a moment and said that among the 2, Harry was the one who was truly qualified to possess the 3 Deathly Hallows, and he himself was not worthy of this honor, because those who can truly defeat death will never think of escaping death, but will only accept it when death is supposed to come. Just like Harry. Harry chatted with Professor Dumbledore for a while, but after a period of silence, Harry and the audience knew what was going to happen next. This was not a place where he could stay for a long time. Harry had to make a choice, whether to continue forward or return to where he came from. According to Professor Dumbledore, what they were like now depended on the person involved. Since Harry saw King's Cross Station there, perhaps Harry needed to get on the train to leave. Harry looked at Professor Dumbledore curiously. "Where will the train take me, Professor?" Dumbledore smiled slightly. "Forward." Hearing this, Adam suddenly felt that the memory of death began to attack him. The compass needle goes round and round, but in the end, it will always fall in front. "I said we should move forward." Adam stretched out his finger and pressed the corner of his eye, thinking, "If there is no MiHoYo in this world, then I will give these knives from the previous life to everyone equally. After all, such a healthy, sunny and positive story should be told to everyone." After listening to Professor Dumbledore's way of leaving, Harry thought about it, because he could choose to go back or leave. Even if he killed Voldemort's Horcrux through this experience, Voldemort is still so powerful, and there is still Nagini, the Horcrux, which has not been destroyed as previous experience, not to mention Harry himself in the movie. Even the audience watching outside the screen can feel the suffocating pressure. Now this communication with Professor Dumbledore is the most relaxing part of the whole movie. No one will be surprised that Harry will be reluctant to leave the relaxation here, but Harry is still Harry after all. He was able to die calmly before. Isn't it because there are things in the world that are more unacceptable to him than death? In this case, how can he covet the tranquility of this world? After saying goodbye to Professor Dumbledore, Harry finally chose to go back. However, the camera flashed, and it was not Harry who got up from the ground, but Voldemort. Everyone reacted after the initial shock, and the soul fragments in Harry's body were just destroyed, and Voldemort would naturally feel it. Even at this time, Voldemort found that Harry was also his Horcrux, so he should be very confused, right? Thinking of this, some viewers couldn't help laughing. But when they saw Voldemort order a Death Eater to check whether Harry was dead, the smiles on their faces disappeared immediately. Why is Voldemort so alert now? Narcissa looked at such a critical moment, and it was actually herself who walked forward, and couldn't help but take a deep breath and hold her breath in the movie. Narcissa slowly squatted down beside Harry and reached out to touch Harry's heartbeat. All the audience couldn't help but hold their breath at this moment, leaning forward slightly to look at the screen, not missing any second of details. Harry didn't choose to set foot on the road of the dead, but returned to the world of the living. Was he still communicating with Professor Dumbledore at this time, or had he returned? Was his heart still beating at this time? The next moment, Harry couldn't help but tremble his eyelids and told everyone without a doubt that Harry was not only back at this time, but he was also awake. Just when everyone's heart was hanging in their throats, they heard Narcissa in the movie speak in a very low voice. Is he still alive? Draco. Is he in the castle, Mom? Draco couldn't help but widen his eyes. He thought that the mother in the movie would stand up on the spot to tell Voldemort that Harry was not dead. And he also thought about the possibility that his mother concealed this matter for the purpose of wanting Voldemort to be defeated, but he really didn't expect this scene in the movie at this moment. At the same time, another scene jumped out of his memory. It was the scene in the boathouse where Voldemort instructed his father in the movie to find Professor Snape because his father did not find him on the battlefield. He wanted to persuade Voldemort to stop the attack and find Harry first. In fact, he wanted to find him in the process, fearing that he would get into trouble during the Death Eater's attack on Hogwarts. This is such a wonderful story, Professor. Dumbledore couldn't help but sigh in a low voice when Narcissa asked this question. In his eyes, Voldemort's path to defeat was completely clear, and the reason why he said this story is wonderful is that in this story, it is not a powerful, destructive force that defeats Voldemort. What defeats Voldemort from beginning to end is the thing he never has loved. From the perspective of this theme alone, this story is really wonderful and in line with Professor Dumbledore's aesthetics. Of course, if you ask Professor Dumbledore whether he prefers reality or movies, he still prefers reality, not to mention anything else. There's Ariana in reality, which is enough. Compared with Ariana, what love or not is really unfamiliar abstract love, after all, still has to fall on specific people. When Narcissa asked, she deliberately lowered her hair to cover Harry's face, and Harry understood and nodded. Instead of answering, Narcissa's hand on Harry's chest to check his heartbeat suddenly tightened, and then immediately retracted. Narcissa stood up and looked at the Death Eaters around her. He's dead. Chapter 381. I want to cry but I can't, it's so painful. After a short silence, enthusiastic cheers broke out among the Death Eaters. They stamped their feet excitedly and pointed their wands at the sky to release sparks. The audience finally let go of their worries at this moment and breathed a long sigh of relief. Harry even felt a little pain in his lungs, probably because of the sequelae of holding his breath for too long. Harry quickly took a sip of lemon tea. Crucio. Hearing Voldemort's spell in the movie, half of the tea in Harry's mouth couldn't be controlled and sprayed out. Fortunately, he was sitting in the first row without time to take care of the tea on the ground in front of him. Harry hurriedly looked at the screen. It turned out that Voldemort was torturing Harry's body. How crazy! How can Harry pretend to be dead now? Huh? Exclamation mark. Seeing Harry, who had no reaction under the Cruciatus curse, the audience was stunned, and then they were extremely moved. He could actually be under the Cruciatus curse. No. This is not me. I don't have such a tough heart, Harry loudly refuted in his heart. But he couldn't stand up and clarify this matter with everyone now. It's not like he hasn't tasted the Cruciatus curse before. Voldemort tortured him with the Cruciatus curse after he was teleported by the Triwizard Tournament trophy. That kind of pain is unbearable for anyone, right? Based on Harry's understanding of himself, perhaps he couldn't withstand the torture of the Cruciatus curse without revealing information or betraying, but it is impossible to remain calm. Hearing Harry's low muttering, Hermione turned her head and looked at him. It should be because of the Elder Wand. As the legendary Deathly Hallows, since you are the owner of the Elder Wand, it is not impossible that the Elder Wand's spell will not hurt you. If it is an ordinary wand, there will naturally be no such possibility. But how can the Elder Wand be considered an ordinary wand? In the previous movie, the Elder Wand even resisted Voldemort's magic. Harry couldn't help but nod in approval. This guess is at least much more reliable than him relying on his firm will to resist the Cruciatus curse in the movie. After using the Cruciatus curse to torture Harry several times, Voldemort asked Hagrid, the biggest man, to hold Harry and go to Hogwarts with him to welcome the final victory, and everyone's submission is for Hagrid being on Harry's side. So what? Now that Harry is dead, even if Hagrid takes Harry's body away, It has no meaning except to bring death to himself. When they learned of Harry's death, everyone on the Hogwarts side felt sad and desperate, especially those who knew Harry and regarded Harry as a relative. Harry never thought that he would hear such a shrill voice from them in his life. In contrast, Voldemort couldn't help laughing. Harry used 0026. Everyone in the screening room, the emotions that had just been brewing and the tears that were almost unable to be held back disappeared all of a sudden. I wanted to cry but couldn't. It was so uncomfortable. By the way, is this really how Voldemort laughs? Even Professor Dumbledore's expression was a little bit tense. Thinking about it carefully, the smiles he had seen from Voldemort were always the reserved smiles or silent ridicules of his school days. He had never seen Voldemort laugh out loud. Why not go back and ask Severus? Faced with Voldemort's solicitation and persuasion to surrender, the teachers and students of Hogwarts were obviously unwilling to surrender, otherwise they would have left through the secret passage long ago. At this moment, Lucius found Draco in the crowd and couldn't help but call Draco to come over to them. Draco looked at Lucius with a tangled look on his face. Narcissa saw this and spoke. Draco, Lucius thought that if Harry died, Voldemort would definitely become the final winner, and staying in Hogwarts would only lead to death. Narcissa saw that Harry still hadn't revealed the fact that he was alive, which meant that the time had not come yet. If Draco angered Voldemort now, he would definitely die, and later, when Harry defeated Voldemort, she would at least not embarrass Draco because she helped Harry deceive Voldemort. The two had different ideas when they spoke, but their fundamental purpose was the same. Hearing Narcissa's call, Draco glanced at his classmates and professors, and walked towards the Death Eaters in the screening room. Lucius looked at his son thoughtfully. What's the matter? My words are not as effective as your mother's. Ahem. Draco coughed, lowered his head silently, and revealed the look from Narcissa on his other side. What? Do you have any objections? Ahem. Lucius silently retracted his gaze and looked at the screen again. After Draco, it was unexpected that the next person to walk out of the crowd was Neville, but Neville did not go to surrender, but led everyone to attack Voldemort again. Voldemort naturally responded to Neville's presumptuous behavior with a powerful spell. Neville was indeed no match for Voldemort, but under Neville's encouragement, everyone in Hogwarts attacked Voldemort's side together. Harry also took this opportunity to jump out of Hagrid's arms and put on the invisibility cloak. Harry Potter is not dead. The screams of fear rang out among the Death Eaters. Voldemort could not care about the group of people in front of him. He turned around and saw that Hagrid's arms were empty, and Harry was nowhere to be found. Faced with the attack from Hogwarts and the terrifying fact that the dead Harry was resurrected, the wavering and timid Death Eaters immediately paraded away, ignoring Bellatrix's angry yelling at them. Indeed, apparition can be tracked in a short period of time after use, but will Bellatrix abandon Voldemort to chase them? Those who are truly loyal to Voldemort will not chase them, and those who are not loyal will not chase them either. If not now, when? So Bellatrix became more and more furious, because she really would not abandon Voldemort to chase him alone, and what made her even more angry was that the Lucius family, as her closest people among the Death Eaters, actually ran away. Narcissa knew that Harry was not dead, so her attention was always on Harry, holding Draco's hand. Everyone thought she was comforting her son and thought it was normal, so they didn't care. It was not until Narcissa saw Harry parade away with Draco the moment he stood up from Hagrid's arms that everyone realized there was something wrong. Lucius couldn't help but be stunned for a moment when he saw his wife and son running away, and then he paraded to follow them in the screening room. Lucius looked in the direction of his wife and son with some resentment. Draco still lowered his head, revealing Narcissa's somewhat evasive eyes. The situation requires, holding Draco can still explain it, but holding you will easily alert that person, right? It seems that this explanation gave Narcissa confidence. After she finished speaking, she met Lucius's eyes without dodging, and this is just a movie. Chapter 382 Motherly love erupts like a volcano. Regarding the fact that Harry was not dead, the Death Eaters actually did not doubt Narcissa too much, or even if they did, it would be useless. Narcissa only helped Harry conceal the fact that he was still alive, but this still did not change the fact that Harry was not killed by Voldemort's killing curse. For the Death Eaters, this was the second time Harry escaped from Voldemort's killing curse, and this time they watched Harry being hit by the killing curse with their own eyes. He could survive. What else could this be but immortality? For a moment, the scene became extremely chaotic, with the voices of wizards, giants, and centaurs mixed together, with the sound of incantations, shouting, roaring, and hooves. In the chaos, Neville, who was originally imprisoned by Voldemort, fell from the air. He shook his dizzy head and saw Nagini not far from him, and a glimmer of silver light in the sorting hat that fell to the ground with him. Before, Voldemort intended to burn him and the sorting hat together, because under his rule, everyone no longer needed to be sorted, and all wizards were Slytherins. As if he recalled what Harry said before, Neville reached into the sorting hat, just like Harry in the second part, and pulled out the sword of Gryffindor from the sorting hat, and swung the sword at Nagini without any obstacles. Nagini's head was immediately separated from the body, and the snake had turned into ashes in the process of falling to the ground, and the snake body also broke into flying ashes from the broken end. Nice. There were sporadic exclamations in the screening room. Although more people were also excited, they really didn't have the energy to talk. It was obvious that this was the final climax, and everyone didn't want to miss any second. No. Sensing Nagini's death, Voldemort roared, threw a spell in Neville's direction, and then disappeared without even looking at whether the spell was effective. He ran away. No, he didn't go far. Although the audience couldn't sense Voldemort's apparition on the spot, they could judge this based on the sight of everyone looking at the castle. Voldemort couldn't just escape like this, but he lost his last Horcrux and no longer had an immortal body. In such a melee, even he didn't dare to stand in the center of the field and output recklessly. He needed a more complicated environment to cover himself, so the battlefield naturally moved to the castle. This time it was even more chaotic than the previous battle. Before, there were only wizards on the Hogwarts side, but this time, centaurs, hippogriffs and even house elves joined the battle. The one who rushed to the front was Creature. He led the house elves of Hogwarts, holding the kitchen meat knife and table knife in his hand, and waved them to charge at the Death Eaters. Fight for my master, in the name of Regulus. Although they were aimed at the parts below the calves of the Death Eaters with their height, just like the role that mechanical ducks can play in street fighting, this attack outside the Death Eaters' accustomed field of vision has an unexpected effect. For a while, the house elves faced the Death Eaters and achieved great results. The camera followed Harry, who was wearing an invisible cloak, through the hall and finally found Voldemort, who was fighting with Professor McGonagall, Professor Slughorn and Kingsley. Voldemort was besieged by 3 people, but he was not at all inferior. With cruel hatred on his face, he threw killing curses at the 3 people while resolving their attack. Since Voldemort also had to spend time to resolve the attack this time, Professor McGonagall and the others actually stalemate with Voldemort for a while. Just when everyone thought that Harry would use the concealment effect of the invisibility cloak to kill Voldemort, suddenly, the camera turned and Harry actually looked at the battlefield next to him. It was also 3 against 1, but Hermione, Ginny and Luna were fighting Bellatrix. Bellatrix kept laughing crazily, and a killing curse in her hand brushed Ginny's body and fell on the wall behind. Blowing a big hole in the wall, Harry moved his feet and rushed directly to the direction of Bellatrix. The audience was anxious and wanted to solve Voldemort first, but on the one hand, this was understandable, and on the other hand, what they said would not have any impact on the plot of the movie. At this moment, a figure directly knocked Harry aside and rushed into the battlefield of the 4 ladies. "Don't touch my daughter, you bitch." A spell repelled Bellatrix, and it was Mrs. Molly who broke into the battle. She shouted at the 3 girls to get out of the way, and then launched a violent attack on Bellatrix. "No. Go back. She's mine, Mrs. Molly even asked several students who wanted to come to help to get out of the way. The sound of spell collision and explosion, accompanied by the shouting and laughter of the 2 ladies, rang continuously. The camera turned to Harry's face, but Harry swallowed his saliva in fear. Harry, who was also terrified and swallowing in the theater, suddenly choked up. Ahem, ahem, ahem. Bellatrix couldn't keep her relaxed smile under Mrs. Molly's attack, but she still madly provoked Mrs. Molly. "Oh, if you die, what will happen to the children behind you?" Bellatrix dodged Mrs. Molly's spell by turning sideways, her face full of provocation, and raised her hand to curse back. "And your other children? Mommy and Fred are dead, and they will." Hearing this, Mrs. Molly's eyes turned red. "You, don't touch my children again." Seeing Mrs. Molly's defense break, Bellatrix couldn't help laughing, but at this moment, a spell hid her chest, which was the position of her heart. In an instant, Bellatrix's expression changed from laughing to bulging-eyed toad, and was smashed into pieces by Mrs. Molly's subsequent spell. "That's it, Mrs. Molly waved her fist in relief when she saw this. "Gudong, Arthur." Weasley swallowed his saliva and nodded in agreement, but the smile on his face was a little unnatural. Just when everyone was shocked by this maternal love like a volcanic eruption, they actually heard a sound like a volcanic eruption. It was the explosion caused by Voldemort's spell, and Professor McGonagall and others who were originally deadlocked with him were blown away by this spell just as Mrs. Molly would explode because of Ginny and other children. Bellatrix was one of the few Death Eaters who was extremely loyal to Voldemort, so Voldemort would naturally be angry about Bellatrix's death. Although the starting points of their anger were somewhat different, Voldemort knocked the 3 people in front of him away and threw a spell at Mrs. Molly, but the spell was blocked by Harry with a shield charm. Seeing Harry take off his invisibility cloak and stand in front of him, the scarlet hatred in Voldemort's eyes reached its peak. Harry Potter, accompanied by a hissing sound like a snake spitting out its tongue, this haunting name came out of Voldemort's mouth. Chapter 383 Voldemort and number 039, S. Life is collapsing like a cliff. Voldemort stared at Harry with his scarlet, narrow eyes, filled with unconcealable hatred and a bit of fear. Yes, fear, although Voldemort himself was unwilling to admit it. After so many times, it was obvious that Voldemort was a little scared of Harry. Let us review Voldemort's life that collapsed like a cliff after meeting Harry. Once upon a time, Voldemort's power swept almost the entire British wizarding world. How many pure-blood wizards were his supporters, and how many dark creatures were his minions? However, after learning that prophecy, Voldemort's life ushered in a turning point. Once the killing curse was cast down, Harry only got a scar, but Voldemort himself was beaten to death by the rebounding killing curse. After finally surviving for several years, he found an opportunity to enter Hogwarts to steal the Philosopher's Stone. He was about to get it, but found that for some reason, he would receive huge damage if Harry touched him. It took several more years, but Voldemort finally figured out the reason and set up a plan to successfully resurrect with Harry's blood. Not only did he return to his peak, but he could also touch Harry without being harmed. This made Voldemort happy, and he immediately "I want to perform a hand-sharp little porter for my subordinates." As a result, within a few minutes of being happy, Voldemort discovered that his own death curse was still in a stalemate with Harry's disarming curse. Not only that, but the person he had killed suddenly appeared to disrupt the situation, allowing Harry to run away. The knowledgeable Voldemort keenly discovered that there seemed to be a problem with the wand, so he went to Ollivander and asked for information about the twin wands. So after replacing Lucius's wand, Voldemort felt that he was able again, and led a group of Death Eaters to hunt down Harry. Harry's wand, who recognized him, automatically counterattacked, causing a stalemate between him and Harry's spell. The power stored in Harry's wand was returned to him. It was at that moment that Voldemort was holding Lucius's wand. That did not exactly match him. He was facing off against Harry and Voldemort, who were holding their own wands. Voldemort was not a big deal, but Lucius Hughes's wand was immediately scrapped. Voldemort was so angry when he saw Harry running away that he went back and questioned Ollivander again, but this time what he wanted to know was the whereabouts of the most powerful wand. Voldemort obviously thought that his last defeat was because Lucius's wand was too weak. How should I put it? Voldemort's guess couldn't be wrong. He could only say that he was right, but not completely right. After asking about the whereabouts of the Elder Wand, Voldemort first went to find the owner of the Elder Wand mentioned by Ollivander, and learned that the Elder Wand had been stolen. Then he went to Bathilda Bagshot and asked who the person who stole the Elder Wand was, and finally went to find Grindelwald. Although Grindelwald would rather die than tell him, he still guessed the whereabouts of the Elder Wand. It turns out that the Elder Wand is the one he has always feared, Dumbledore's wand. No wonder Dumbledore is so powerful, but the good news is that Dumbledore is dead now. After going around in such a big circle, Voldemort finally got a legendary most powerful wand, the Elder Wand, or the Elder Wand, the Wand of Destiny, and the Death Stick in Professor Dumbledore's tomb. Voldemort believed that the most powerful Horcrux in the legend would bring victory to himself, just as it had brought victory after victory to its master in the legend. And unlike the legendary eldest of the 3 brothers, he was already powerful enough, and he would not be killed by a sneak attack since he had a Horcrux. However, just when Voldemort imagined that he would sweep away the Potters and return to the top, he got the bad news. Harry and the others went to Bellatrix's vault, but only stole a gold cup from it. It was the one he told Bellatrix to take good care of. One of his Horcruxes. Horcruxes have always been Voldemort's deepest secret, but Harry's actions with such clear purpose clearly revealed the secret of Horcruxes. Even though Voldemort was confident that he had so many Horcruxes that the discovery of one Horcrux would not make the situation uncontrollable, the uneasiness of this secret being discovered still made him angrily kill Gringotts and take Nagini with him. Go check the whereabouts of other Horcruxes. You wouldn't know if you didn't check, but this check shocked Voldemort. The diary left with Lucius? Gone. The ring that was kept in the Gaunt family's old house? Gone again. The locket placed in the cave on the island? Both are gone. plus the golden cup that I already knew was gone. Okay. He made a total of 6 Horcruxes, and he thought they were foolproof, but now the Horcruxes that still belong to him, apart from the crowns that are still in Hogwarts, and there are no accidents, the only one left is Nagi beside him. Voldemort, who had never felt that death was so close to him, took people directly to Hogwarts. On the one hand, he heard that Harry had gone to Hogwarts, and on the other hand, he needed to confirm the safety of the crown. Voldemort originally thought that there was no need to worry too much, as the crown was placed so well that it would not be found so quickly. He suddenly felt that a Horcrux had been destroyed, because he had split his soul too many times. His induction to the Horcrux was already very weak. This induction was obviously not the first or even the second Horcrux to be destroyed. The sense of urgency made Voldemort take action angrily, but at this time, he discovered that the Elder Wand did not completely obey his orders, but was rejecting his power. Unparalleled blessings and misfortunes never come singly. Before he could solve the problem of the Elder Wand, or even before he could conquer Hogwarts, he felt that another Horcrux had left him. Now Voldemort was completely scared. He only wanted to do 3 things now: protect Nagini, solve the problem of the Elder Wand, and kill Harry. As long as these problems were solved, it didn't matter if many of his Horcruxes were destroyed. Horcruxes were only effective with one. Once those 3 problems were solved, there would be no one who could threaten his life, so Voldemort went up. Voldemort thought he had obtained the ownership of the Elder Wand. Voldemort went up again. Voldemort thought he had killed Harry. Then Voldemort sensed that he had lost another Horcrux, and this time he even destroyed it himself. Harry, this kid, is actually his Horcrux? ? When Voldemort got up from the ground, the question marks in his mind could probably cover the entire Forbidden Forest. However, Voldemort quickly adjusted his mentality. Although he lost another Horcrux, he still had Nagini as a backup, and Harry was also successfully killed. He didn't lose anything after rounding it off, but just now, Voldemort knew that Harry was not dead. He was at a loss just now, but there was no reason for this. The reason why Voldemort dared to randomly select someone to check whether Harry was dead was because he was sure that Harry was really dead after all. This time Harry really took his killing curse, and he didn't even resist. Even his own soul fragments were killed by him. How could Harry not die? Oh my Slytherin, you kid don't have a Horcrux, do you? Chapter 384 Harry, the Talkative One. Whether Harry has a Horcrux or not, at this moment, Voldemort has completely lost his Horcruxes. Enemies are extremely jealous when they meet, and the two stand on both sides of the center of the venue, holding their wands tightly in their hands. Seeing Harry appear, and still alive and kicking, everyone around couldn't help but feel happy for him, and even wanted to come forward and stand on the same front with him. No. Don't come over, Harry. Hardly stop them. This is a battle between me and him. It must be me, apparently. On the way here, Harry has figured out why Voldemort's Cruciatus curse can't hurt him, because he is the real owner of the Elder Wand. Before in the wonderful place, Professor Dumbledore and he had talked about the ownership of the Elder Wand. It was a wonderful coincidence, and now, this coincidence will lay the foundation for his victory. Of course, as Harry said, he must fight Voldemort one-on-one to win. Voldemort holding the Elder Wand is still deadly and powerful to others, and he doesn't want to see anyone die again. Not only that, to achieve the final victory, he also needs to shake Voldemort's heart, otherwise Voldemort can only not hurt him, and he still can't kill Voldemort. He needs an opportunity. So next, in everyone's shocked eyes, Harry started to trash talk Voldemort, including but not limited to mocking him with Voldemort's previous defeats against him, mocking him with Voldemort's surname, mocking him by saying that Voldemort is not as good as Professor Dumbledore, and telling him that Professor Snape has been an undercover agent to mock him. My bloody mother, Ron looked at the Harry on the screen who made Voldemort speechless and defeated, and couldn't help but open his mouth. Is this still Harry? At this moment, Ron's mood seemed to see his roommate, who was silent and inconspicuous on weekdays, suddenly shined and won the first place in the campus singing competition. Brother, you make me feel strange. Harry was fascinated by it, and couldn't help turning his head to look at Ron when he heard this. What? Can't this person you are familiar with do such a thing? Finally, as if stimulated by the fact that Snape was an undercover agent so long ago and he still trusted him so much, Voldemort shouted to stop Harry's words and began to fight back. So what if Snape is Dumbledore's man? So what if Dumbledore arranged for Snape to become the Master of the Elder Wand? He has killed Snape now, and the Master of the Elder Wand is still him. Voldemort felt relieved, but he didn't know that this just provided Harry with a better output space. Because of a fact that killed people and hurt their hearts, Professor Dumbledore's plan did not succeed. But you just changed this. Do you want to try to recall it? Repent for your past decision, Harry's words made Voldemort lose his composure unprecedentedly. He showed a cowardly expression from his arrogant and proud expression just now after learning that he killed Snape. Harry's face did not have the panic he expected that his plan would fail, and he was not even surprised. That certainty was definitely not fake, but he didn't know. He didn't know what went wrong. The time has come. Harry looked at the confused Voldemort and tried his best to suppress his joy. He only had one chance, therefore. Harry didn't rush to tell the truth about the owner of the Elder Wand. He said that Professor Dumbledore was willing to die, so the process of Professor Snape killing Professor Dumbledore was not a battle. Since it was not a battle, Professor Snape naturally couldn't say that he won, or took the ownership of the Elder Wand from Professor Dumbledore. Professor Dumbledore gave it to him voluntarily. Hearing this, Voldemort breathed a sigh of relief and laughed wantonly. Even if Snape didn't take the ownership of the Elder Wand from Dumbledore, what if he took the Elder Wand from Dumbledore's tomb? He still took the Elder Wand against Dumbledore's will, and the owner of the Elder Wand was still him. Voldemort didn't expect that. If that was the case, why would the Elder Wand reject his magic before? The fear just now made him lose his mind, so that he instinctively believed this thing that was more beneficial to him, like a person who was about to drown grabbed the last piece of driftwood. But what Voldemort didn't know was that this was not driftwood, but a straw that couldn't hold him up. This was just a little false hope Harry gave him before to make him reveal a bigger flaw. So Harry found this opportunity and ruthlessly delivered the most fatal knife. No, Voldemort, you didn't understand me. He only said that Professor Dumbledore did not give the ownership of the Elder Wand to Professor Snape, but did not say that the ownership of the Elder Wand was in the hands of Professor Dumbledore, and he just said that it was your own decision, Voldemort, that caused the ownership of the Elder Wand not to be in your hands. Have you forgotten? Without waiting for Voldemort to react, Harry continued to speak, telling Voldemort that before Professor Snape, someone had taken the Elder Wand from Professor Dumbledore against his will, and that person was Draco Malfoy, whom Voldemort sent to kill Professor Dumbledore. The sharp blade of those words pierced Voldemort's heart fiercely. Voldemort was so angry that he couldn't help but take a deep breath, but he only felt the pain reaching his limbs with his breath pain. It hurts so much. The main reason why Draco was asked to kill Dumbledore was just a punishment for Lucius's failure to bring back the crystal ball containing the prophecy. He did not expect Draco to play any role in killing Dumbledore. Good news, Draco played a big role. Bad news, it was a side effect. If it weren't for this, he would be the master of the Elder Wand now. Seeing this, even the audience couldn't help shaking their heads and making a tisk 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 sound at Voldemort, who was stunned so miserable. Inhale. After taking a deep breath, Voldemort quickly adjusted his mentality. After all, he was still confronting Harry. Even if Draco is the master of the Elder Wand, so what? Even if the Elder Wand rejected his power, the Elder Wand was still powerful enough to kill Harry. He would find Draco and kill him later, and the Elder Wand would still be his. No, you're too late. Harry showed a mocking smile and shook the wand in his hand. See this? This is what I snatched from Draco before. Does the old wand in your hands know that I am its owner? Hiss. Adam in the screening room couldn't help but take a breath when he heard this. NTR in person, you are worthy of it. There was no sense that this script was integrated by him based on the novel and the movie, and everything from the lines to the performance was from his own hands. Voldemort was obviously also stimulated by Harry's behavior of NTR in person. He didn't want to believe this fact. He raised the old wand to Harry frantically and recited the spell that he was most familiar with and that was also the strongest in his heart at the moment. Avada Kedavra. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 385. Be detailed. This is, looking at the scene on the screen, most of the audience fell into a state of daze just like Voldemort. Harry also subconsciously used the spell he was most familiar with and best at, the disarming spell. What surprised the audience was that after the red light of the disarming spell and the green light of the killing spell collided with each other, there was not even a moment of stalemate. The red light directly overwhelmed the green light and advanced towards Voldemort with overwhelming momentum and speed. The speed was so fast that it seemed as if Voldemort's killing spell was fake. Voldemort was hit by the spell, and the old wand in his hand flew directly into Harry's hand. While Voldemort himself fell slowly with an unbelievable expression. He died. Voldemort, who wanted to live forever and thought he was different from anyone else, was no different from those mortals who died under his spell when he died. It's the Elder Wand. A voice suddenly sounded from the side row, which made everyone feel familiar. Everyone turned their heads to look over there, and soon the news came back from the front. It was Mr. Ollivander. Ollivander's wand shop is only busy during the school season, so Mr. Ollivander was invited to watch the last two movies while the movie was still in the calm stage after the climax of defeating Voldemort. The camera slowly pushed over the survivors. At the request of his neighboring wizard, Mr. Ollivander explained the truth of the scene just now. In short, the Elder Wand found that Voldemort, who was not its owner, not only used it forcibly, but also used it to cast the killing curse on its real owner. Therefore, not only did it not provide power for Voldemort, but it even actively cooperated with Harry's disarming curse, so Voldemort's killing curse seemed to have no power at all, and Voldemort's death was also due to the rebound of the curse caused by the resistance of the Elder Wand, so it can be said that Voldemort died in his own hands. This is really, the last two movies were too oppressive, but even for Voldemort, the final death process was so quick that they were caught off guard, and those who experienced all this in the movie sat in the Hall of Hogwarts, with the joy of surviving the disaster, but their expressions were not rich. And it seemed that they were not much different from their mood after experiencing the ups and downs in the past. I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed when I saw everything settled down. This disappointment lasted until the end of the movie. The scar has not hurt for 19 years, and everything is peaceful, accompanied by Harry's inner monologue. The camera slowly faded in the figure of the Hogwarts Express carrying Harry and his next generation. If they have any legendary experiences again, then this is a new story. As the screen went black and the lights in the theater came on, the audience was still immersed in the aftertaste. After chasing the boy who lived for half a year, it finally ended as the first round of applause slowly sounded. The audience couldn't help but applaud the movie. Although no one accepted the applause on the spot, they were still moved by the excellence of this series of movies. Many viewers even think that this is the best movie of dream cinema so far, especially the strong sense of immersion that is half real and half fictional, which is something that those Muggle stories can't bring them. All this, of course, not all viewers think so. After all, the current film library of dream cinema is still very powerful. The reason why many movies can become classics is that the emotions and spiritual cores they describe are universal. At the end of the movie, the first person to leave was probably Adam, and he even left before the movie really ended. After all, the re of the last few fragments is not so exciting. It is better to organize the memories provided by Professor Grindelwald into a text version. He is more interested in this before the release of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Strange, have these two old men been stimulated by something recently? While watching the memory with interest, while thinking about the wording and modification, Adam also had the mind to gossip about the love status of the two centenarians. After all, it is understandable that Grindelwald wants to make his story with Professor Dumbledore public, but it is hard not to think deeply about Professor Dumbledore's tacit attitude towards this. After thinking about it, Adam snapped his fingers, and his Patronus, the Maine Coon cat, jumped out of the window. This was to find Adam's informant. Although as the headmaster, there are informants everywhere in Hogwarts, and now Hogwarts has a complete set of monitoring magic, but the information obtained in this way is bland and tasteless compared to the gossip told by others, without any sense of surprise and suspense. Just like what he is doing now, Professor Grindelwald's memory needs to be modified and formatted in the process of conversion to make the story more attractive. Although Adam thinks that the story itself is already very attractive, but after all, the two of them were together for only 2 months at the beginning, and the memories of the two people getting along with each other could not be longer than that. Even if they were made into a book, it would not be as thick as a book of American history, so Adam planned to make it in the form of a notebook or memoir. In addition to the written records, one can also add hand-drawn portraits of the two people, thanks to the shorthand quill pen refined by Nicholas Flamel. The picture imagined by the owner can be perfectly reproduced in reality. Not long after the informant Adam had found arrived, the gatekeeper let the informant into the principal's office at Adam's command. "You've got the right person to ask this." Amon, who is about to become a gossipmonger at Hogwarts, patted his chest to show that he knew the news well. After all, as one of the professors of divination, and the higher education stage will not officially start until next summer, Amon's life is so leisurely now, and he naturally likes to ask about gossip when he is free. In addition, as the youngest professor of divination at Hogwarts, Coupled with his skilled divination routines, students will also ask him to tell their fortunes and love affairs when they are free. Oh? So detailed. Adam couldn't help but put down his work and leaned forward slightly. Amen also moved a small sofa and sat down opposite Adam without any hesitation. He picked up a teacup from the tea tray next to him, and picked up the teapot to pour himself a cup of milk tea. After swallowing the milk tea, Amen smacked his lips. The sugar is a little bit less, it should be doubled. Well, this story starts from the Halloween dinner. Chapter 386. Who would do such a thing? Under Adam's death gaze, Amen, who habitually kept things a secret, went straight to the point. Let's go back to the day of the Halloween dinner. With the accompaniment of food and candlelight, the atmosphere of the dinner was perfect, so two professors who did not want to be named suggested that everyone dance together after the dinner to put a full stop to this wonderful night. Then the two professors brought everyone a wave of shock from Argentine tango. The two of them were almost close to each other from beginning to end, and their tacit cross-circling and endless gorgeous changes instantly became the focus of students' attention. Where have the little wizards who usually dance ballroom dance, waltz, and at most standard tango seen this? So the atmosphere of the ballroom suddenly became hot, and it was hard to say whether the dance put a full stop or a colon for that night. However, in that hot atmosphere, Amen keenly discovered that something was wrong with Professor Dumbledore and Professor Grindelwald in the professor's seat. Their smiles when they applauded were very forced, and they were also mixed with many complicated emotions. I did think it was strange at first, but after watching the movie you made, I realized that they were a couple back then. Amen couldn't help but sigh. I guess they saw their past selves and couldn't help but feel emotional. Adam, well, they did see their past selves, in every sense. So the two old professors were stimulated by seeing their past selves showing affection. Adam thought it might not be that simple, but more in-depth information was not something Amen could get by asking around. The most urgent task was to make the love peripherals of the two professors first, so that the two old men would not regret it after thinking about it. As long as I can produce the finished product quickly, it will be too late even if you regret it in the following period of time. The news that the entire series of The Boy Who Lived was finished became the well-deserved focus of the wizarding world. Many viewers who were fans of those characters before couldn't help shouting, Adam, you have no heart after watching these two movies. Yes, the fact that the owner of the Dream Cinema is Adam has never been concealed, and the screenwriter column of this movie is also Adam's name. Let's talk about those viewers who can't hold back their emotions. They frantically denounced Adam's inhuman behavior in the media. After listing the situations of several movies, everyone discovered Adam's sinister intentions. He just used the fairy tale-like illusion at the beginning to trick them into eating knives. First of all, in the first few movies, no good people died from beginning to end. Even a dangerous monster like the basilisk roaming around Hogwarts did not kill a cat, and Cedric's death was a sudden blow to everyone. Such a wonderful person died like this. He didn't even see who killed him. Voldemort's attention was obviously only on Harry. He didn't even look at Cedric. After that, Adam began to behave less and less like a human being, but everyone still knew nothing about the hell ahead. They naively thought that the death of Professor Dumbledore was the limit. Having written this, the author cursed and added a sentence. The plot about Professor Snape will be discussed in depth in the next issue. Tisk. Tisk tisk. Look, even the screenwriter of the Daily Prophet can't help but scold Adam. Seeing this during lunch break in the office, Ron smiled and pointed at this paragraph and looked at Harry, but he didn't see the joy of sharing the same hatred on Harry's face. Harry, what's wrong with you? Nothing, I just think Adam will be happier than you when he sees this newspaper. Harry sighed. During this period of time, everyone's defense-breaking condemnation became more and more intense, and Adam turned a blind eye to it and even vaguely showed signs of fueling the flames. After all, part of the new peripherals launched by the Dream Cinema are obviously fueling the flames. From this, he seemed to have a sense of Adam's thoughts, and he even couldn't help but have a bold guess. Could it be that Adam just wanted to see them like this, so he made these movies? However, this idea only appeared for a moment, and was automatically ignored by Harry. After all, how could such a thing happen? Not to mention who would do such a thing. Although there are some unexpected twists in the story, the overall twists and turns are bizarre and touching. Whether it is writing these stories or making them into movies, the cost is visibly high, spending so much effort just to see them break their defense. It is impossible in any way at this moment. Adam has come to Fred and George's house with the props he made with great effort. Dong. Dong dong. Someone is coming. Someone is coming. After Adam knocked on the door, The string of wind chimes on the eaves suddenly transformed into a silver mouth, and Fred and George shouted at the same time. The wind chimes seemed to use the same magic as the howling letter, and the layers of sound waves shook the whole house. Good guy, it's a good thing that the two live alone, otherwise Mrs. Molly would tear them alive. Due to the needs of their experiments, stocking up and other aspects, they had already moved out of the Weasley family. Their residence was not far from the burrow, just 2 small hills away. It would take less than 10 minutes to arrive by flying at full speed on a broomstick. After 2 minutes, no one came out of the house. Adam looked curiously at Fingling, who seemed to be tired of shouting and stopped shouting, wondering if there would be any further measures for this little gadget made by Fred and George. We are probably in the laboratory. Please wait a moment. It was not known whether it was Fred or George's voice. Fengling turned his head and said something to the outside of the door. In Adam's somewhat surprised eyes, he rushed directly into the drain pipe. Not long after, a somewhat dull but strong roar came from the house. Before Adam could hear clearly what the roar was saying, the sound was cut off. Within 10 seconds, Fred and George came out and opened the door for him. Oh, it turned out to be Adam. I thought it was my mother. Come in quickly. While speaking, Fred tilted his head and kept rubbing his ears with the base of his palm, and George standing behind him also did the same action. After inviting Adam in, George couldn't help but say to Fred, "Why did you add a function to the doorbell that allows you to find us in the lab?" "Didn't I say that I was afraid that my mother wouldn't be able to find us when she came over? After all, the lab has soundproof magic. Why didn't you tell me that you added a roaring link that can penetrate the soundproof magic?" "I'm also afraid that my mother wouldn't be able to find us when she came over." The two brothers looked at each other with the same face for a while, and finally sighed. Who could they blame? Giving up on pursuing the responsibility, Fred and George looked at Adam together. "So, Boss Adam, what brought you to Fred and George's cabin on this beautiful day? Did you make another hellish product that you want our authorization for?" The two couldn't help but have a bit of resentment in their tone, probably because the last time Adam brought the finished Smiling in the Netherworld, a product they designed themselves. Chapter 387, The Power of Moon Prism. No, you misunderstood me. I'm here to visit you this time. You haven't been to Magic Wheezes in a few weeks, right?" After hearing Adam's words, Fred and George couldn't help showing a bit of embarrassment on their faces. Ever since they watched the finale, they wanted to invent a magic item that would allow them to share life and live and die together. Although they knew that this kind of thing could not be researched in a short time, and they were prepared to spend a long time researching it, the scene in the movie was so shocking that they would not be able to spend time in the laboratory during this period. Feeling flustered, but after all, it was just a movie. For this reason, they had to waste their own work and attract their boss. With their big hearts, they couldn't help but feel a little guilty when facing Adam at this time. "Don't worry, I'm just here to see if anything happened to you. I'm not here to urge you to go back to work." Seeing the two people's disbelief, Adam's eyes widened. "What misunderstanding do you have about me? Am I the kind of person who adds insult to injury, and then adds insult to injury, halfway through the words?" Adam saw the word Smiling 9 Springs popping up in their thoughts, and added another half-sentence with some guilt. Fred and George looked at each other and decided to take Adam's word for granted since he was their big boss. Adam was speechless when he saw the two people's thoughts. "Hey, don't think I'm so ruthless. I brought you a gift." "Oh? Gift? What is it?" After hearing what Adam said, Fred and George changed their behavior and looked interested. Could it be some prank prop invented by Adam? Just watch the entire series of The Boy Who Lived movies and you will know that Adam is really good at poking people's soft flesh. If this ability is used as a prank prop, for some reason, the hellish prank prop called Smiling 9 Springs popped up from the depths of memory again, and the expectations on their faces also froze. Faced with Fred and George's misunderstanding and slander of him in their hearts, Adam decided to use reality to prove that he has always been a sunny and cheerful gentleman. "Look, what is this?" Adam took out a pair of silver egg-shaped objects from his pocket, about the size of a quail egg. The two of them together did not fill Adam's palm. Fred and George certainly don't take things so superficially. As quite senior masters of magic item production, they are proficient in transfiguration, alchemy and even potions. They can see that this is a pair of magic items and they have a deep connection with each other, but the deeper information, it seems that these magic items have not been activated yet. With Adam's permission, Fred cast several detection spells on the two metal eggs, and Fred touched his chin and analyzed. "Wow, It's all thanks to you, Fred. I wouldn't have known it if you didn't tell me. George rolled his eyes at this. The symbolic meaning of the oval itself is unfinished and immature. This is clear enough from the appearance. Does it need to be said? Fred was also quite direct about this. Yow up. No OBP. Facts have proved that some simple and straightforward expressions that abandon grammar and even original meaning will indeed make communication more efficient. Once Adam habitually said it, it quickly spread around Hufflepuff. It can only be said that it is fortunate that the current scope of influence is only in the wizarding world in the UK. Otherwise, when these words appear in the IELTS-TOEFL in the future, many Chinese students will not be able to help but raise questions naturally. George couldn't see much. The magic used in making these metal eggs was very different from the magic they used. After all, it was impossible to achieve what Fred and George expected with those magic spells. Thing Adam did not explain directly, but first asked each of them to drop a drop of blood onto a different metal egg. It is quite dangerous to let unfamiliar magic items come into contact with your own blood, but Fred and George did not doubt Adam and just dripped the blood on it. As for whether the Adam in front of him is someone else who drank Polyjuice potion and pretended to be, not to mention Adam's inimitable and unique temperament, pretending to be Adam is probably the most difficult thing in the wizarding world. Not everyone can achieve Adam's magic of conjuring various delicacies at will. As we all know, the transformation spell cannot change food, so it can only summon the food that has been prepared. But not everyone can make the food so delicious. The food must be kept at its best when it appears. The situation is even more difficult after dripping the blood. Fred and George immediately discovered that they had an inexplicable but extremely deep connection with the metal eggs. What is this? Discovering that this connection even went deep into his soul, Fred immediately exclaimed. George only discovered this after being reminded by Fred, and looked at Adam in shock. Damn, this is not the real Adam, right? Seeing that the two of them were frightened, Adam stopped pretending and explained, this is a magic prop I made. Well, I haven't decided on a name yet. You can temporarily call it Guardian Sweetheart, inject magic into it and shout Moon Prism power, Shui Bingayu transformation to activate it. Guard, what the hell? What the hell is that one at the back? At the same time, Fred and George were relieved. It seemed that the person in front of them was indeed Adam himself. At least they didn't have to worry about Adam harming them, so their attention returned to the, Shugochara in their hands. The two of them injected magic power into Shugochara without giving up, but found that the Shugochara in their hands did not respond at all. Don't think about it. You must read the command to activate this thing. Hurry up. George was still a little unconvinced and wanted to try again. Fred looked up and his face turned black. He saw Adam took out a camera and pointed it at them with expectation. Wait. Why does this scene seem a little familiar? Seeing Fred's thoughtful expression, Adam smiled slightly, operated the camera for a while, and then turned the camera in his hand to face the two of them. Fred U0026 George version of the erosion Gansavi. Fred! Exclamation mark. Don't let it go. The dead memory is starting to attack me. After the forced start failed, Fred and George tried live movement. Are you practicing silent spells, soft chanting? Haven't you eaten yet? Speak louder, and high-speed divine speech? Speak slowly. Shugochara can't hear clearly, but all failed. The two also wanted to throw the Shugochara in Adam's face and told Adam that they would not open this thing, but, although Adam likes to cheat people, he has never hurt them, and the more cheating things are, the more beneficial they are. So they are willing to jump into the trap even if they pinch their noses. Considering Adam's mysterious style this time, the reason why Adam came this time, and what they were doing before, in the end, the two gritted their teeth and read out the sentence with clear pronunciation and a moderate speed. The power of the Moon Prism, Sailor Moon transforms. Chapter 388 Dual Phase Protection. After pressing the button to end recording, Adam sighed regretfully. It's a pity that the attempt to change clothes according to the posture failed. Otherwise, with the transformation actions and special effects, this wave will be a surefire success. Before Fred and George had time to check what happened to the activated Guardian Sweetheart, when they heard Adam's words, cold sweat suddenly flowed down from their foreheads. Fortunately, Adam seemed to just say it casually, put away the camera, looked at the two of them and said, "Look at your hands, Fred." And George looked down after hearing this, just in time to see the Guardian Sweetheart transform from the original appearance of a metal egg into the appearance of a bird. This is a magpie. If it were any other bird, Fred and George might not recognize it due to its silver appearance, But how could they even recognize their patron saint? That's right. Let me introduce to you my latest invention, a protective semi-automatic magic costume, dual phase protection, double protection. Fred pondered the true name of this magical item as for the previous protective sweetheart. It was obviously a spoof name that Adam made up at random. That's right, but a simple introduction is not vivid enough. Why don't you experience it for yourself? Hearing what Adam said, Fred and George couldn't help but have an ominous premonition. Sure enough, Adam touched his hand into his sleeve and pulled out the one that was much longer than his forearm. Where did you put it? Big bang bang. He only had time to complain, but Fred was directly overwhelmed by the explosion caused by Adam's magic spell. Fred. Adam, what are you doing? George was shocked when he saw this scene. I haven't used this one for a long time, and I'm a little used to it. Adam moved his wrist, then looked at the slowly dissipating smoke. Don't panic. Haven't you heard of the law that smoke causes no harm? I believe you. The smoke from the explosion and the eighth boy who lived wasn't big enough, and Fred died very quickly. Adam was speechless for a moment, then said, that's a movie, artistically processed. After speaking, Adam continued without waiting for George to reply. Look, Fred isn't dead now, is he okay? George turned his head and looked over. Although he knew that nothing serious would happen to Fred before, Fred's condition was better than he imagined. There was only a little dust on him, and he couldn't tell that he had just been hit. Use black magic that can kill you. What was in front of Fred was a layer of silver fluid that was as smooth as a mirror and was flowing slowly. Yes, that is the dual phase protection. It has the ability to automatically detect danger and protect the owner. It is enough to block the physical damage caused by large caliber sniper rifles and most black magic. Adam raised his chin, with a bit of contentment on his expression. After all, he had done all the work independently during the production process of this work. Otherwise, how could he not be able to transform into a beautiful girl with the use of chewing pay? Ahem. Then not the point. As he spoke, Adam took out a pistol, loaded it, raised his hand and shot George. The bullet was also blocked by the automatically deformed dual-phase shield, and the bullet that bounced directly broke the window. Fred, who had just regained his composure, couldn't help but said when he saw this scene, I just wanted to say, why do we have to try it at our home? Can't we go out and try it again? He was indeed fine, but what about the crater on the floor that was created by the big explosion? The damage caused by black magic cannot be repaired by repairing it as before. Then you are too lazy to go out. I will just fix it for you. Adam waved his hand, and the floor and glass returned to their original state as if they were traveling back in time. Fred breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this. The construction method of their hut was relatively simple. It could be said that it was purely based on stacking building materials in a physical sense. It was only possible to maintain it by magic. It was almost equivalent to ripping out a floor and relaying it. The hut is about to be rebuilt. After feeling relieved, Fred stretched out his hand curiously, and the dual-phase guard in the air shrank and deformed. When it returned to Fred's hand, it transformed into the appearance of a magpie. This process was completed in the blink of an eye. Oh my God, this dual-phase protection is so powerful. Fred couldn't help but sigh. I think this is not the full function of dual-phase protection, right? George looked at Adam and said, yes, in fact this is just an additional function of the dual-phase protection. In order not to hinder daily life, its danger detection mechanism is actually not completely reliable. Many curses and other methods that do not directly cause damage such as explosions are used by it. There is no way to detect it and react automatically, so I call it semi-automatic. Adam explained, the true role of bipolar protection can only be achieved by identical twins who completely trust each other and are even willing to die for each other. Fred and George were shocked when they heard this and were deeply moved. Although I don't know what the identical one in front of the multiples means, the other conditions match them perfectly. Even around Adam, they are the only ones who fit this description. In other words, it's made for them. Ahem. Adam, who had customized magic costumes for many people this time, suddenly felt his throat was a little itchy, but he didn't feel guilty. Anyway, the bipolar protection was indeed tailor-made for Fred and George. After clearing his throat, Adam began to tell the two of them the true function of this dual protection. Because of the special characteristics of identical twins, they can be regarded as a complete individual in occultism, and the true effect of bipolar protection is also developed based on this. Connect the vitality and soul power through the dual phase protection to form a unique connection. In this state, any damage that is not directly fatal will not be able to kill one of you. This connection will cause death from the other side. Draw the corresponding power from your body to repair the injured party, provided the other party is willing. Adams' words made Fred and George look ecstatic. Isn't this exactly the magic prop they want to make? However, Adam's words were not finished yet. In addition, the reason why I want to emphasize that in order to exert the true effect of the dual phase guard, one of you needs to be willing to die for the other, because the dual phase guard also referred to two magics during the production process, the Horcrux, and the magic left by Harry's mother on him. Let's call it the passive resistance curse. Hearing this, Fred and George were stunned for a moment with expressions of joy and anticipation. Soul weapon, that's right, don't be so repulsive. Do you remember what I said? In mysticism, identical twins can be regarded as a complete individual, which is the soul of both of you. Under this connection, you can completely combine them. They regard each other as each other's Horcruxes. Adam then said, of course, this only provides a possibility. Without the black magic when making Horcruxes, your souls do not have the magic power to prevent the other party from falling into real death like Horcruxes, so the passive resistance spell is used here. Looking at the two identical people in front of him, Adam slowly said, this is a magic that sacrifices oneself to protect the other person until they reach adulthood. After I modified it, this magic can continue to exist through the relationship between identical twins, which is closer than any blood relationship, and when you both have the same idea of being willing to die for the other, it creates a miraculous cycle of protection. Chapter 389, One Good Show After Another. Speaking of this, even Adam couldn't help but sigh at the fit between this magic prop and the twins Fred and George. The magic costumes he made for other friends and even for his family were no less thoughtful than the two-phase guards, but the effect was not as good as the two-phase guards. Of course, the conditions for using those magic costumes were not so harsh. In addition to this most important function, when you concentrate on controlling the two-phase guard, you can also control it to deform and move, but I don't think it's necessary. After all, the magic that the two-phase guard can do can basically be done. Finally, after explaining, looking at Fred and George with joy on their faces, Adam shook his head. Then you can study it slowly. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. Oh, by the way, don't forget to get back to work early. After saying that, Adam left the space to Fred and George, and teleported away directly. Now it's February, and everyone's discussion of the boy who lived has also decreased, and has turned to the things about Grindelwald and Dumbledore when they were young. At this moment, it is a good time for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them to be released. Let me see the memo, huh? In addition to the scheduled movie release, Adam couldn't help but raise his eyebrows after turning a page. The world's first martial arts tournament? What is this? Oh, I remember, that martial arts competition. Adam suddenly realized that the power of the mysterious side of China, and it was a national-level competition for the younger generation. In an urban novel with a domestic background, it is at least a climax before the protagonist goes to the international map. It really makes people look forward to it. Is this the feeling of one good show after another? Adam calculated in his mind. After watching this world's first martial arts tournament, Hogwarts just opened the higher education stage, and when everything is stable, closing the memo, Adam's eyes flashed with some expectations. After pacifying the country, it is natural to resist foreign aggression. If he doesn't turn the current foreign into the internal, how can he feel at ease to explore the external? When the promotion of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them slowly spread to the British wizarding world, from a broader perspective, the magic world market in various countries in the world has almost begun to show some subtle changes, but this change is too difficult for the wizarding world of various countries that have been peaceful for a long time to detect. Even if it is detected, no one can realize how serious the consequences of these changes will be. The bullet has just been fired and needs to fly for a while. Turning our attention back to the British wizarding world, when everyone saw the headline of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them on the front page of the newspaper, they were a little surprised that there was no other news to report today. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is not only the title of a movie, but also Newt's work. It is very famous all over the world. It will be updated every once in a while. Of course, as Newt gets older, The frequency of this update is gradually decreasing. Obviously everyone thought that this front page was reporting that Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them has been updated. Even if Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is indeed famous and can be regarded as the most professional and comprehensive in the field of magical zoology, it should not be on the front page, right? It seems that there is really no news to read today. With some disappointment, the wizards looked at the report with a mentality of having already ordered it, and then they suddenly felt what a surprise is. It's not a book about magical zoology, but a movie from the fantasy cinema. In the subtitle of the Wizard News, it was written, "After the Boy Who Lived," another work from the fantasy cinema related to reality. What secrets will it reveal for us this time? Of course, as a semi-official newspaper, the Wizard News would be more reserved in its words, but other newspapers did not have so many concerns and just let themselves go. 70 years ago. Another masterpiece from Reed. Will it be a fairy tale or a tragedy this time? You must watch it. You must look forward to it. According to insiders, the real protagonists of this movie are actually Dumbledore and Grindelwald after their breakup. Countless, half true, half false, half guessed reports were overwhelming, almost drowning everyone, especially after it was mentioned that Professor Scamander, Professor Dumbledore and Professor Grindelwald would appear in the movie. Everyone's expectations were directly maxed out. That was when they were young. With the previous The Boy Who Lived as a foreshadowing, everyone is more looking forward to the unknown love, hatred and vengeance between the two people in this movie. As for how much truth and falsehood there are in it, that is something that only those who studied the history of magic and those who are bored will pay attention to. The main purpose of watching gossip is to see the excitement. To be honest, who cares whether it is true or false? On the day when the tickets for the Dream Cinema were sold, if Adam had not had the foresight to temporarily hire a group of people from Eugene to help, the original security strength of the Dream Cinema might not have guaranteed that there would be no problems in the ticket sales process. Huh? My God, are these people crazy? After 3 full hours, everyone finally stopped being so crazy, and the Aurors finally breathed a sigh of relief. Harry wiped his forehead, and the sweat was more than when he watched his own social death clips. I think they are not much different from crazy. Ron also panted heavily. It was just February, and his shirt was almost soaked. As for why Ron, who is not an Auror, is here. Adam needs more manpower, and the Aurors in the Ministry of Magic don't have too many rich manpower. Even if Adam pays more, it is impossible to send all of them to be security guards. So those young wizards who graduated after the reform of Hogwarts were sent here together because they had a certain basic guarantee of strength and were considered to be competent for the work of maintaining order. There were some who were unwilling to come at first because they also wanted to grab tickets, but Adam promised that he could keep a ticket for them in addition to the salary. Now those who were originally glad that they were not selected could not help but feel a little envious. Now they look at those people who are crowded and constantly looking around and praying to grab tickets. In addition to being shocked, they also feel a sense of superiority. After all, these people almost broke their heads for this, and they can get tickets without grabbing. Although it is not a premiere, they have ways. Seeing that the order on the scene was basically stable, Harry turned his head and whispered a few words to Ron. And Ron nodded and raised his hand to make an okay gesture. Then Harry looked around, spotted a wizard who had just grabbed the ticket, and walked up. "Hello, please wait a moment." The wizard was stunned, looking at Harry with an Auror badge on his chest and an Auror armband on his arm, and said with some surprise and uncertainty, "Harry Potter?" Yes, it's me." Harry was a little helpless about his popularity. Originally, he only had obvious features, but after the movie was broadcast, even his specific appearance became known to everyone. This was really a kind of sweet trouble for Harry. "What do you want to talk to me about?" "Ahem. It's nothing big, I just want to ask." Harry coughed lightly and looked at the 2 tickets in the man's hand. "Would you like to exchange tickets with me?" Chapter 390 Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Harry said that he couldn't get the premiere tickets because of his job. Then he said that he had non-premiere tickets and wanted to add some other compensation to exchange for the premiere tickets in the other party's hand. The wizard hesitated. Although it was Harry Potter who spoke up and the other party seemed very sincere, "But I plan to watch this movie ticket with my girlfriend, so I'll add 50 gold galleons, deal?" So it was done. Harry returned to his post with 2 movie tickets and nodded to Ron. With this operation, Harry and Ron were able to come to the screening room on the day of the movie premiere to enjoy the first right to watch the movie. "I'm a little curious. I heard that this is a story from our youth, MRS. Tina looked at Newt beside her with some curiosity. Well, it is an old rule to invite the person concerned to watch the movie. If it weren't for Adam's invitation, the old Scamander couple would not come to watch any movie. If we talk about the advantages of the release of Fantastic Beasts and where to find them, the biggest advantage is probably that it doesn't have to be as troublesome as before, and you don't have to find many people to get authorization. There are only a few people from the British wizarding world in this movie. The Scamander couple originally agreed without much consideration about which movie they would appear in. Professor Scamander and Adam are also old acquaintances, so naturally they don't worry that Adam will harm him. In recent years, Professor Scamander has occasionally come to Hogwarts. There is no way. The Forbidden Forest is too tempting for him now. It was Adam who repeatedly requested and asked the two to watch The Boy Who Lived by the Way. The two old people really cared about this movie and decided to take a look. Adam showed me the outline, and basically there is no change. It's our original story. Newt lowered his head and whispered, "Oh? It's good to recall the past." Hearing Newt say this, Mrs. Tina nodded. Instead she watched The Boy Who Lived and read some related newspapers. It was a great story. In comparison, reality seemed dull, but no one would think that movies were better than reality. There were too many misfortunes and regrets in that grand narrative. In comparison, the dull reality was more cherished. Their past was thrilling enough, and Mrs. Tina didn't want their story to have any more irreparable tragedies. It's okay for other people's stories, but if it happens to themselves, older people can't bear to see these. Without telling Newt what she was thinking, Mrs. Tina looked at the empty seat beside her. Why haven't Ralph and the others come back yet? The two old people are nearly 100 years old. Even if the wizard is in good physical condition, the family will inevitably be worried. Considering this, Adam specially gave 2 more family tickets. Originally, Adam thought that the people who came would be Professor Scamander's son and daughter-in-law, but he didn't expect that they would end up in the hands of their grandson Ralph and granddaughter-in-law Luna. Maybe it's because Professor Scamander's son and daughter-in-law haven't seen the movie, but Ralph and Luna have experience. They are at the counter, saying that Adam gave the exchange ticket. Newt whispered, "I see. Speaking of which, the movie hasn't started yet. You don't have to think about others so early, MRS." Tina teased her socially anxious husband with a smile on her face. He always looks like this when there are many people around him, and it is hard to tell that he is actually a lively person in private. Newt just smiled shyly. This is his first time to come to such a crowded place with people sitting around. While the two were talking, Ralph and Luna had already returned with the big and small bags. "Why did you buy so much, MRS?" Tina was a little surprised, then frowned and looked at Ralph with some disapproval. Since going to Hogwarts, this grandson has become a bit picky about food. He always likes to order takeout, and usually buys all kinds of snacks instead of eating home meals. It would be fine if it was at home, but now outside. "Grandma, these are all exchanged with the exchange tickets Adam gave me." Ralph sighed, cried out for injustice, and then looked at his wife for help. Luna nodded to indicate that Ralph was right. One exchange ticket can actually exchange for so many things. Obviously, Luna was much more honest than her grandson in the eyes of the old lady, so Mrs. Tina loosened her frown and looked at the big and small bags, with a bit of joy between her eyebrows. Adam is really something, let alone eating them while watching movies. You can't finish them in a day or two when you take them back, MRS. Tina also knew that Adam was a fan of her husband, and she has always been proud of her husband's achievements. Many of them are peripherals for use, and there are not many edible things. I can finish them all in one day. Hearing Ralph's words, Mrs. Tina's face, which had just shown joy, suddenly darkened. Although some people have always said that Ralph looks like Newt, but don't follow him in the bad place of not being good at communication, and although Newt is not good at speaking, his emotional intelligence is still very high. At least he can hear what others want to express. He just rarely expresses it. But think about it, Ralph's personality does not hinder him from finding a partner, and he has found a very good girl. Maybe Ralph's emotional intelligence is just a bit biased. Mrs. Tina took a deep breath and tried to adjust her mentality. Luna had already packed the things she had exchanged in advance, and put a separate bag of food suitable for eating while watching a movie. After sitting down, she took it out and distributed it to everyone. Tina looked at this scene, and then looked at Ralph, who happily took the popcorn. Her blood pressure, which had just been suppressed, suddenly showed a tendency to rise again. Fortunately, at this time, the lights in the theater dimmed, and the screen also played advertisements. Obviously, the movie was about to start. Mrs. Tina turned her head and stopped paying attention to Rolf after a short advertisement to tell everyone that the movie was about to start. There was the familiar logo of the Dream Cinema, and as always, it was perfectly integrated into the opening of the movie. What made Mrs. Tina frown was that the beginning of this movie was almost as dim as the Deathly Hallows this is. The camera turned, and lightning broke through the dark sky, illuminating a group of wizards holding wands and walking slowly forward. The next moment, the spell that broke out swallowed them directly. The camera slowly moved, and a back figure appeared. Wow, I didn't expect that I would be the first to appear. Am I really the protagonist? Professor Grindelwald, who was sitting in the corner, had his eyes light up and took a few caramel-flavored popcorns and threw them into his mouth. Although it was just a back view, how could someone else have such a unique temperament? Professor Dumbledore glanced at Professor Grindelwald speechlessly, reached out and grabbed a popcorn from the popcorn bucket in front of him and threw it into his mouth with Grindelwald as the protagonist. Is it a horror movie or a war movie? Chapter 391 Newt Brand's Suitcase, a must-have for home and travel. Actually, romance movies are not bad. Adam smacked his lips in the screening room, just when everyone couldn't help wondering whether they were watching Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them or The Boy Who Lived IX, The Return of Voldemort. A newspaper flew up from the ground and stuck to the camera on the main headline of the front page. The name of Gellert Grindelwald was clearly written, and the identity of the back figure just now was Grindelwald of that year. Amid everyone's shock, the camera passed through newspapers one by one, explaining the background of the times to everyone. Through this method, the newspapers came from various European countries, which just corresponded to the previously mentioned Grindelwald sweeping across Europe. Many viewers even found the Daily Prophet in them. Some of these newspapers focused on Grindelwald's situation and the possible dangers, while others discussed other things, such as Quidditch, potions, and some discussions about wizards and no magic. Wait, I seem to have seen that report. When seeing a copy of the New York Ghost newspaper in the United States, a certain fragment in Mrs. Tina's memory was suddenly touched. I still remember that she was demoted to the Wand Application Management Office at that time. This position is almost equivalent to the Centaur Liaison Office of the British Ministry of Magic before, which is an extremely marginal position, almost just waiting to die. So she was unwilling to stay in the Wand Application Management Office, and at that time she had enough time and leisure to read various newspapers to understand the current situation. Unlike Madame Tina, other audience members paid more attention to other places. American wizards call muggles no mag. Ron frowned. Although the newspaper did not specifically introduce what no mag was, he could understand the meaning from the context. It sounds better to call our muggles, although the two words do not seem to have much difference in meaning. Harry looked at the words about the increasing exposure level of wizards mentioned in several newspapers that flashed by, as well as some remarks about no mag, and could not help but feel a little confused. American wizards seem to have a bad impression of muggles. In general, there are similar people in the British wizarding world. Although after the main force of these people was transformed in Azkaban as Death Eaters, similar remarks basically had no audience, at least on the surface. But even before, except for the period when Voldemort's forces controlled the Ministry of Magic, the British wizarding world would not show obvious contempt for muggles. Even if everyone does this, they won't say it out loud. Maybe it's a bit hypocritical, but it's undeniable that this hypocrisy actually limits wizards to a certain extent from taking action against muggles for a little thing. Everyone needs to maintain this respectability when it's not necessary. But in the movie, the current American wizarding world even directly shows its contempt for the so-called no mag in the newspapers. It's a bit scary to think about what they usually do, especially the subheadings in a certain newspaper, which mention that wizards even cast a spell to make snow fall in Times Square, and also mentioned the problem of wizards casting too many spells in residential areas. Harry's not like those who grew up in the wizarding world. He still knows that Times Square is a landmark building in the United States. In addition, the newspaper mentioned that with the development of muggles, the possibility of wizards being exposed is getting bigger and bigger, which made Harry think about this problem. He had never thought about these things before. The camera freezes on the Statue of Liberty, and enters reality from the newspaper. Although it is just a beginning, Adam has found that his other purposes besides watching fun have made a good start. That is, some people have begun to think about the issues that he hopes the movie will draw everyone's attention to. Is it Harry? Adam's eyes flickered slightly. That's right, Harry may not be the smartest one among the three, but he must be the one with the most flexible mind, always able to think of ways to break the rules. The movie continued, and Newt, carrying a suitcase, came to the United States on a cruise ship. There was also a small episode, that is, Newt's suitcase seemed to contain something alive because there was a scene where the suitcase opened the buckle by itself. Newt was not surprised at all after noticing it, and then he closed the buckle again, and then held the suitcase in his arms and whispered to comfort it. Listening to the name of Dougal at the beginning of that speech, it was obviously not Newt talking to himself. Dougal, MRS. Tina thought for a moment, then turned her head to look at Newt. I remember this name, the furry child who loves to play hide and seek. Newt smiled and nodded, indicating that his wife was right, and then looked at the movie with a little more nostalgia in his eyes. In addition to seriousness and doubt, he originally thought that this film would be a work similar to a personal biography, collected from various parties involved, but no one should know about his experience on the cruise ship. Even if Adam guessed based on his own personality, he shouldn't be able to guess Dougal accurately from language to actions. Right. Later, when passing through customs, when the security inspector asked if there were any livestock in the box, Newt and the box's reactions clearly proved that there were indeed some animals in it. Faced with the security inspector's request to check the luggage, everyone's heart couldn't help but tighten, and they couldn't help but think about how Newt would respond. Pull out the wand and cast a confusion charm on the security inspector, but there are people all around them. However, when Newt pushed the box in front of the security personnel, he pushed a certain mechanism on the box, and the metal button that was raised had Muggle Mode written on it. The security personnel had a serious expression when they opened the box, but Newt was not afraid at all. The camera turned and the box was filled with common items such as maps and clothes, common items for Muggles. Seeing this, several viewers couldn't help but sigh that this box is really a must-have for home, killing, family, people, and travel. Releasing fire. However, they haven't seen the real power of this suitcase. If this movie had been released decades earlier, I would have been in big trouble. Newt couldn't help but smile bitterly when he saw this. Well, as the world's leading magical animal researcher, Newt had to use some simple and unpretentious methods when he wanted to study magical animals from all over the world when he was not famous at first, such as smuggling. Once his box was exposed at that time, it would inevitably bring great obstacles to his researches for the exposure now. It doesn't matter. It's not that he can ignore the laws of the Ministry of Magic of various countries now, but the Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts is enough to meet his research needs. The camera turned, and some people in windbreakers gathered around a ruin. One of them seemed to be an eyewitness, and he was describing the formation of the ruins. According to him, the ruins were caused by a black wind with white eyes. After destroying the surroundings, it dived into the ground. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 392, The Chosen Melon. Here it comes. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but get excited. Although Grindelwald mentioned at the beginning seems to be a very important storyline in the movie, the name of the movie is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and everyone must want to see Newt and his magical beasts more. At least most viewers think so according to this person's description and the name of the movie. Although everyone doesn't know, it should be caused by some magical beast. So what is the other party? Black Wind, with white eyes. Ron scratched his head and looked at Harry in confusion. Have we learned or encountered such a magical beast? I don't remember such a magical beast. Harry also failed to search in his mind, but he then looked at the screen and said, looking at the situation shown in the movie now, this magical beast is very destructive. It is probably a magical beast in the 5th area, limited by their strength. They did not complete the exploration of the 5th area before graduation. In addition to various fire dragons, they only knew 2 or 3 magical beasts with a danger level of XXXXX. Just when everyone was curious about this magical animal, the ruins in the movie suddenly made some strange noises, and the walls cracked for no reason. Thinking of what the witness said before, the other party had drilled into the ground. Would the other party not leave yet? The audience's eyes lit up before everyone could think about it. The unknown magical animal that made the noise in the ruins ran away half underground. As for why it was half underground, generally speaking, after escaping underground, it would not cause any big noise for others to find. Otherwise there would be no need to escaping underground. Wouldn't it be faster to run directly? But in the movie, this guy seemed to be underground because of habit. Although he was running along the way, he caused a considerable impact on the surface of the ground, and the bricks and stones of the road were pushed and splashed everywhere, which was extremely arrogant. Looking at those people who were obviously muggles who were frightened by the noise, everyone was more curious about what the magical animal was, and at the same time, they couldn't help but feel sympathy for the staff of the Magical Congress of the United States who were responsible for giving muggles oblivion in the end, whether it was because there were too many muggles around or the staff on site were not competent enough. The magical animal ran away openly, leaving only a deep gully in the corner of the screening room. Grindelwald couldn't help but smile at himself in the movie, but he immediately stopped smiling when his eyes fell on Dumbledore's face beside him. Professor Dumbledore's expressionless face looked a little pale under the dim background and the screen lighting. And he looked at the screen without saying a word. Grindelwald touched the back of his ear awkwardly and adjusted his sitting posture to make himself look less arrogant. Ahem. I almost forgot the identity of this little guy. The camera turned, and the protagonist on the screen turned back to Newt. At this time, he was walking on the street, and his face was full of curiosity as he looked around. Perhaps he was too focused on watching, so he didn't notice that there was a large group of people gathered on the roadside in front of him. He didn't look at the road carefully and bumped into a passerby who was eating a hot dog. Mrs. Tina saw her first encounter with Newt on the screen, and she couldn't help but smile. She turned her head and looked at Newt beside her, and the other person had the same expression on his face. Do you know what I was thinking at that time? Hearing Mrs. Tina's question, Newt thought seriously for a moment. To be honest, that memory was too long ago, and he didn't know at that time that he would have so many intersections with Tina later. Even if he remembered that it was their first meeting, he couldn't remember the passing glimpse exactly. But fortunately, the movie just showed Tina's expression at that time. Combined with Tina's situation and her personality at that time, you should think I was rash and a little angry at that time, but soon you felt a little confused, Newt whispered his analysis, because I was very obviously acting like a foreigner at that time, and, to be honest, I didn't fit in with the muggles around me, which made you a little alert, MRS. Tina sighed. She knew that Newt would not take this opportunity to say anything good, but it was not surprising at all. After all, the other party has been like this for so many years. How should I put it? She likes it too. At this moment, a fat man flashed by in the movie. He was carrying a suitcase and hurried forward. He accidentally tripped over Newt on the way and knocked the suitcase in his hand off. Then he picked up the suitcase and continued to go to the bank in front with the crisp sound of a coin falling to the ground. Everyone saw a pair of claws vaguely sticking out of the suitcase held by Jacob. The two of them bumped into each other just now, so they took the wrong suitcase. Suddenly, some viewers couldn't help laughing. The man was obviously a muggle. He was holding a suitcase of magical animals. I don't know how much trouble he would cause. However, apart from the person involved, even the most imaginative Harry would not have thought that this muggle would become a very important character in the subsequent story, and was even called the Chosen One by fans. Even Harry, who grew up in the muggle world, would not think that muggles were capable of intervening in the events of wizards. Although he had previously thought that the muggles' booming technology might pose a threat to the wizards' hiding, a single muggle was too weak for a wizard. But humans are such magical animals. The biggest difference between them and other animals is not magic, but their extremely complex emotions. The power contained in these emotions makes people highly socialized and thus become the masters of the earth. It is also this power that allows wizards to use magic power far better than magical animals. Jacob, Newt, looked at the round man on the screen and couldn't help laughing, but the next moment he lowered his head and wiped his eyes, and the smile on his face became a little deformed. For a while, Jacob is a muggle after all. There is no magical power that can make him have the average lifespan of more than 100 years like wizards under normal circumstances. And whether it is the experience of participating in the First World War or his wide and fat body, it undoubtedly shows that he does not even have a body that is healthy enough to live relatively long among muggles. Even with the help of the potion used at all costs, Jacob only lived to more than 80 years old, and now he has been dead for more than 10 years. The laughter of recalling the happy times and the bitterness of regretting that his friend is no longer there, together intertwined into Newt's complex mood at the moment. Mrs. Tina was also touched. She supported her chin with a hand close to Newt, and then stretched out her little finger to wipe the corner of her eye casually. Jacob was also her friend and her brother-in-law. After Jacob's death, her sister Queenie also left her within a year. The magic of wizards can protect them, but when wizards lose the will to live, this power will also lose its effect. Voldemort's mother died because of this. Chapter 393. Where's the Wonder Bread? The audience didn't know the complicated feelings of the Scamanders at this time. They just felt that the current movie clips were too interesting compared with the fairy tale style of The Boy Who Lived in the early stage and the adult fairy tale style in the late stage. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is obviously more comedy-oriented, seeing the Niffler having fun in the bank and Newt making a lot of jokes in the bank to catch it. The audience laughed. In order to catch the Niffler, Newt had to chase all the way into the vault, and in the process attracted the attention of Muggles. On the first day of arriving in the United States, Newt successfully achieved the achievement of robbing the bank vault. However, Newt's behavior and the commotion caused by it made Tina notice him. At the moment when the wizard was in danger of being exposed, Newt's Niffler caused a riot in the bank, and Jacob, a Muggle, was involved in the process. What's more, Newt has not cleared his memory well. In fact, Jacob almost, physically, cleared Newt's memory just now, so Newt, who did not intend to resist law enforcement, followed Tina obediently to the MACUSA to be dealt with. Although the audience was worried about what would happen to Newt next, as the camera and Newt entered the MACUSA, everyone immediately let out a somewhat shocking exclamation compared with the British Ministry of Magic, which could be entered through public places or through telephone booths. The headquarters of the MACUSA looked much more impressive. However, wizards soon gave a popular science to their companions around them. The main reason for this gap was that the British Ministry of Magic had existed hundreds of years ago, and after repeated renovations, it was inevitably affected by the previous old buildings and could not be changed too much. The headquarters of the MACUSA obviously looked very new, and it was obvious that it was built in recent years. It was even a building that stood upright in the city of New York. Tina took Newt to the Serious Crimes Investigation Department, but was driven out by the president of the MACUSA, Serafina Picquery, because they were discussing a major event, the subsequent impact caused by the magical creature that caused the ruins before in the corner of the screening room. A professor of defense against the dark arts, who did not want to reveal his name, sighed regretfully. If I had known earlier, I would have kept him here and sentenced him to death on the spot. At least I would have found and killed the box of magical animals first, or confiscated it. One misstep can lead to eternal regret. This chairman has appeared in the newspaper at the beginning of the film before. Her speech in the newspaper was also trying to calm the wizards down. She feels like a guy similar to Fudge. Seeing this, Ron turned his head and said to Harry. Harry was a little surprised to hear this. Ron actually remembered the contents of those newspapers that only stayed for a few seconds just now, but saying that this chairman of the Congress is like Fudge should be the case. In the current general recognition of the British wizarding community, Fudge has become a standard politician who turns a blind eye to the truth and even suppresses those who speak the truth in order to make the overall environment appear stable. The president of the Congress was just trying to maintain the stability of the environment and didn't want a war to happen. He didn't turn a blind eye to the truth. Harry looked at the president of the Congress, who didn't listen to Tina's words, and asked her to leave. He couldn't help but paused in his heart, but still felt that the president of the Congress was not guilty of such a crime after all. The issue they were discussing just now was indeed a big deal compared to Newt releasing a Niffler and causing a riot. This is why Harry unconsciously underestimated Hufflepuff's ability to cause trouble, because Newt was a Hufflepuff and had been their professor for a year before. As long as they leave the UK, Hufflepuff's physique for causing trouble is not inferior to Gryffindor at all. In addition to ignoring Tina's words, President Serafina's words also revealed a piece of news, that is, Tina used to be an Auror but is no longer one now. Obviously, she should have had problems at work before. This also explains Tina's discomfort when Newt asked her if she was an investigator before, and why Tina interrupted the goblin employee in the elevator before. If the words of President Serafina just now were the beginning, then Tina's boss, who came to reprimand Tina after hearing the inquiry, showed Tina's situation vividly. I still remember your expression at that time. It was very cute. As he spoke, Newt couldn't help but turn his head to look at Mrs. Tina. But what he got was a vicious look from Mrs. Tina. Newt shut up on the spot, lowered his head and turned his head back, and at the same time, his eyes couldn't help but move up and look at the screen again. At this moment, the man called Minister Graves arrived. He was also one of the people who went to investigate the ruins before, and had a meeting with President Serafina in the Serious Case Investigation Department. Just now, judging from the reactions of the people present, this person is obviously in a high position. His arrival made Tina feel relieved. While getting rid of the accusations of her boss, she finally had the opportunity to tell Newt's situation. When everyone was about to check Newt's suitcase, the audience couldn't help but feel their hearts tighten. This time Newt didn't have time to check it, so he couldn't switch it to Muggle mode. Besides, all the people present were wizards. Would they be fooled when they knew there were magical animals inside? However, when the box was opened, There was neither a niffler nor the bird snake that had just hatched in the bank, nor the travel supplies in Muggle mode. The 3x2 grid was filled with all kinds of baked bread. Everyone immediately recognized that this was the suitcase of the Muggle who was involved in the incident at the bank when the other party wanted to borrow money from the bank to open a bakery. He showed the bank staff the bread he made. These were the things in the box at that time. He took the wrong box again. The expressions on the faces of the three people facing the box were world-famous paintings. Where are the magical animals? What is this? Magic bread. Seeing the shock on Tina's face and the WTF expressions on the faces of the other two people looking at the small bread, the audience suddenly burst into laughter. Some viewers also said that this was too coincidental. However, the audience around him directly refuted him. He took the wrong box because he was nervous on the way to the bank to borrow money. Then, after he was suddenly involved in the wizard's incident, wasn't he nervous when he wanted to escape, especially? At that time, Nit almost made no secret of wanting to do something to him. The audience, who thought it was too coincidental, opened his mouth and couldn't speak. But the funniest scene is the next one. When Newt walked up and found the bread in the box, the shock on his face was no less than Tina's. The camera turned and Jacob had returned home with Newt's box. When he was upset that he failed to get a loan from the bank, the metal buckle on the suitcase suddenly opened by itself. Chapter 394 Grindelwald. I am so good at comforting people. The sound of the metal buckle opening was not hidden, and Jacob soon noticed the movement breaking free from his annoyance. Jacob slowly walked to the side of the suitcase and looked at the suitcase with some suspicion. The movement just now seemed to come from here, but why did the suitcase make a sound by itself? Was it his illusion? However, just when he was about to convince himself, the metal buckle on the other side of the suitcase opened by itself in front of him. Just when Jacob was frightened by the abnormal scene in front of him, the movement of the suitcase became louder and louder, and even began to jump, as if something wanted to come out of it. Jacob's expression gradually became terrified, and his feet stepped back step by step, and finally stuck to the wall. At this moment, the box suddenly stopped moving again. The audience, who had been looking forward to seeing the magical animals in the box, were so anxious that they pounded their thighs. The previous sniff was so cute. The next second, their expectations were met. Jacob took a step closer to the box with some doubts, and the box opened directly. A pink creature jumped out and pounced on Jacob, and was caught by Jacob. The audience, who were looking forward to seeing the sniff again, looked at the pink mortar rat with anemone-like tentacles on its back, and the expectations and smiles on their faces gradually disappeared before they could recover from the shock and disappointment. The box jumped up suddenly, and another magical animal escaped from it. It should have been so, but the camera kept moving, and everyone only saw things being destroyed but not the magical animal. Is this the same kind of magical animal as before, eh? Wizard couldn't help but speculate in a low voice. After all, the magical animal that caused the ruins before was invisible to the naked eye and would also cause destruction. I feel that this is more like an invisible beast, but it is not impossible. Another wizard analyzed while looking at the crumbling chandelier. The magical animal before could fly, but this one didn't seem to be able to, but he didn't say it for sure. Who stipulated that flying magical animals can only move by flying? As he was talking, the animal had broken through the window, and everyone saw a small flying figure flying out of the window, but it was too fast and too small, so everyone couldn't see what it was. Jacob looked at the broken window in shock, and then he was knocked to the ground by the mortar rat because he was not careful for a moment. The man and the rat fell to the ground and wrestled. The camera turned, and a little girl sang a song about burning witches and played games. It can be seen that the environment there seems to be a church organization, and the surrounding furnishings are basically against wizards. The pattern of the flag even broke a wooden stick with both hands. Everyone noticed this organization at this time, and then remembered that this organization had actually appeared many times before, but it was not the focus, so everyone didn't pay much attention to it. The first time this organization appeared was to preach at the door of the bank, so many people gathered and attracted Newt's curiosity. Several conversations in the previous plot also showed that this organization seemed to tell everyone about the existence of wizards and incite muggles to be wary of wizards. In addition, Tina's boss's words of reprimanding her seemed to mention that Tina had investigated this organization before, and Tina was also secretly investigating in the crowd before, but not many people noticed this detail. But in any case, this scene in front of us still caused many wizard audiences to dislike this organization. In addition to the audience who simply appreciate the movie, some viewers did not stop thinking while watching. They believed that this movie would also have a hidden meaning like the previous, The Boy Who Lived. Since the movie now shoots this section separately, this organization will not be just a simple background board, but will participate in the plot. So, what will Adam want to express in Fantastic Beasts and where to find them? Some professional writers thought of such a topic in discussion space, and they were so anxious that they wanted to take out the quill pen and parchment on the spot to write an urgent manuscript and publish it in the evening. Unfortunately, the Dream Cinema has a complete set of rules and a complete security team. So this kind of thing can only be thought about in the mind. Looking at the gloomy credence on the screen, Professor Dumbledore's sight is this day finally coming, when Adam said to Professor Dumbledore, "Professor, I want to be the principal." He did not hide his idea of abolishing the statute of secrecy and letting wizards and muggles know each other's existence, but to be honest, Professor Dumbledore's mentality at the time was a bit bad. Although he was very humble and self-controlled, Professor Dumbledore was undoubtedly proud in his heart. He believed that he was the most powerful wizard in the world, so he had the responsibility to maintain the stability of the wizarding world. But this pride was directly shattered by Adam. In addition, he was old at the time, and he spent half his life on Grindelwald and half his life fighting Voldemort. He really didn't have the heart to care about Adam. Simply put, he was tired, and the little energy and time he had left was not enough to deal with Voldemort, so Adam could do whatever he wanted. However, Professor Dumbledore's current state is different from that of the past. Ariana has made him regain his hope for life. In addition, through the stimulation of the young version of himself showing affection every now and then, although he and Grindelwald have not reconciled, they are more ambiguous than before. Naturally, his worries about the future situation have come to his mind again. "Why think so much, Professor?" Grindelwald patted Professor Dumbledore on the shoulder and comforted him softly. "Think more open-mindedly. We are not Adam's opponents at all, Professor." Dumbledore reached out and held Grindelwald's hand on his shoulder, and then threw it away fiercely. "Thank you, I was comforted. I'm just telling the truth. Why are you angry, Professor?" Grindelwald shrugged innocently. He didn't care about what the future would be like in Adam's hands, and he was even happy to see Adam break the statute of secrecy. After all, this was something he couldn't do back then. The reason he can be a good professor in Hogwarts now is purely because of Professor Dumbledore's bond with him, his inability to beat Adam, and his curiosity to see what the world will be like in the future, not because he has become a good person who wants to contribute to the next generation of wizards. Professor Dumbledore was so angry that he couldn't breathe smoothly. He drank a sip of Coke and watched the movie. After thinking about the past, he couldn't help but glare at Grindelwald. Grindelwald glanced at the screen and suddenly felt that although this movie had his and Dumbledore's scenes, it seemed to be a bit disadvantageous to him overall. Watching this movie, he seemed to be in the wrong when facing Dumbledore. Chapter 395. Newt, weak, pitiful, and innocent. The camera quickly returned to Newt. He and Tina were walking on the streets of New York. Apparently, the box of miracle bread just now made everyone think that Tina was talking nonsense. Now the two are on their way to Jacob's residence. Tina wants to erase Jacob's memory, and Newt wants to get his box back. Tina was complaining that Newt didn't use Oblivion on Jacob, and a billywig flew directly over the two of them. "Newt, Tina. What is that, Newt? A moth, maybe?" "Well, it's a big moth." Tina, who thought there was only one Niffler in Newt's box, felt that a muggle knowing about the existence of wizards was the most important problem. Little did she know that losing Newt's box was far more serious than a muggle knowing about the existence of wizards. Newt, who already had bad guesses, quickened his pace with some guilt. However, seeing a big hole in the wall in front of him, Newt couldn't deceive himself anymore. The magical animal in the box ran out, after giving a confusion spell to the crowd on the roadside who seemed to have witnessed the escape of magical animals, making them think it was a gas explosion. Newt hurriedly ran into the corridor, where he found the unconscious Jacob and, well, his disciple. "A house with 3 walls, I have a Merlin." Seeing this, Ron's expression was dumbfounded. When Professor Scamander was young, was he so wild? Someone in the newspaper previously joked that the 3 of them broke almost all the laws of the Ministry of Magic when they saved the world in The Boy Who Lived, but their crimes were just like in the movies, and they only did those things when they were saving the world. Professor Scamander is really a professional when it comes to crimes. How many years do you think Professor Scamander will be sentenced to now? As he spoke, Ron couldn't help turning his head to look at Harry. Unexpectedly, Harry thought about it seriously. "It depends on how many magical animals escape from the box and what kind of damage these magical animals cause." Ron was stunned when he heard this somewhat serious answer. He wasn't a brother, he was just joking. "Do you really want to send Professor Scamander in?" After a moment of silence, Ron looked at the screen again. At this time, Nit had quickly repaired a damaged house with a repair tool, so when Tina rushed in and walked in the door, she saw Newt sitting on the bed holding the box, looking innocent. Mrs. Tina in front of the screen couldn't help but laugh angrily when she saw this scene. Well, so there was such a period before that. When she turned around, she saw that the innocent expression on Newt's face was exactly the same as the one on the screen. Originally, she thought that watching the movie this time was to look back on her past youthful years, but now she found something unexpected after watching it. After all, she was the person involved, so she couldn't experience the omniscient perspective of the audience. The suitcase is open, looking around the room. Tina's eyes fell on Newt. Well, it's just a crack. Newt couldn't help but lower his head as he spoke. That? Niffler ran away again, maybe, then. Look for it quickly. Tina's expression when she looked at Newt was not a good one, because it showed that her workload was about to increase, and she had to catch the sniffer before it caused a big mess. Otherwise she would end up in a dire situation. As for why it was Newt's sniffer that caused her a worrying end, because her previous behavior of following and investigating the anti-wizard organization was against the rules. She had already been transferred from Horror to Peripheral Department for violating the regulations. If she did it again, she could basically say goodbye to the Magical Congress, and if Newt sniffing attracts the attention of the Magic Congress, then her previous violations of the rules will be discovered together. Then Tina found a wound on the neck of Jacob, who was lying on the ground. Just as she was about to see if the person was still conscious, she was startled by the motley rat that suddenly jumped out. Fortunately, Nit caught the opponent quickly with his quick eyes and hands, and skillfully stuffed him into the box. After the shock stabilized, Tina realized something was wrong. She looked at Newt and issued a soul torture. What else is in your suitcase? Newt was silent for a moment, perhaps thinking about which magical animal to start with. At this moment, Jacob woke up and indirectly helped Newt out of the siege. However, Newt repaid the enemy with a grudge and wanted to give him a forgetful moment. Well, maybe it was also to retaliate for being hit by a suitcase. Revenge for a headshot. Fortunately, Tina stopped Newt, otherwise there would be one less chosen one in the world. Tina's reason is that Jacob can serve as a witness, and his current condition is very bad. If they forget about each other now, it may lead to bad consequences. After a small quarrel, the two took Jacob away, and then the photo of Jacob's grandmother suddenly fell down on the wall, revealing Xiu hiding inside. Oh, it's so cute. I want to buy one and keep it at home, eh? Witch couldn't help covering her face and exclaimed in a low voice, why didn't she find Sniff so cute before? If Mrs. Tina hears this, she will definitely advise her to think twice before acting, otherwise she will regret it. But Mrs. Tina's attention is not here at the moment. She and Newt couldn't help but widen their eyes when they saw this. Is this scene real? It should be designed for the movie effect, right? Otherwise, how did Adam know? There should be no one there at that time. Then the movie did not tell where Newt and the others went, nor did it follow the sniff, but came to the outside of Jacob's house and put it on a child eating a lollipop. Just when everyone felt strange, an apple on the stall next to the child suddenly floated up out of thin air, and was eaten bite by an invisible existence. It was the invisible magical animal before. Unlike the audience who were surprised by this, the child was just confused when he saw this scene. He watched the apple being eaten out of thin air in the air, and couldn't help turning his head to tell his parents about it, but when he turned his head, the lollipop in his hand was also snatched away and eaten. The camera stayed on the lollipop, and suddenly, a portrait on a floor-standing billboard opened its eyes. Some viewers staring at the screen were frightened, because the realistic eyes on the cartoon-style billboard gave them an uncanny sense of horror. Then, as the color blocks on the billboard moved, a monkey-like outline was vaguely revealed, and some wizards in the audience finally determined what it was. It turned out to be an invisible beast. Hearing these voices of sudden enlightenment, Nit smiled with satisfaction. This magical animal from the Far East can be recognized by so many people in the British wizarding world. Obviously, the popularity of magical zoology is very high now. Chapter 396. I have 17 cards, can you defeat me in 1 second? The outline of the invisible beast was almost fleeting, and then only the chaos caused by the invisible beast was seen, and the invisible beast was no longer visible, and this is also in line with the characteristics of invisible beasts. Even among wizards, only those who are professional in catching invisible beasts can capture their whereabouts. Obviously, the previous scene was just to let everyone know what kind of magical animal this was at this time. Some people were also confused. Neither the ability nor the habits of the invisible beast seemed to be able to make the ruins look like before, referring to the ruins at the beginning of the movie, not Jacob's home. So some people were so stupid that they couldn't help it. Who said that magical animals that can be invisible must be invisible beasts? What does the invisible beast that ran out of Newt's box have to do with the breed of that magical animal? The person who was confused before was stunned by what he said, so he became angry, and got angry. The audience who were prepared to watch the excitement sighed, and at the same time couldn't help but lament that the British wizarding world is really different now than before. In the British wizarding world in the past, law could be said to exist in name only. Even kind-hearted wizards like the Weasley family would only abide by the law on the surface. After all, most members of the Wizengamot are very busy, and they don't have time to attend hearings to judge prisoners every now and then. I'll just give you some money and cooperate with your rhetoric before letting you go. Of course, if you are really stubborn or have no money, you can only send him to Azkaban. But now, haha, the Supreme Tribunal of the Ministry of Magic already has more than 20 judges permanently stationed. When full, they can work in 3 shifts and hold court 24 hours a day. Except for things they don't want to try and things they don't know, there's nothing they can't do. Judgment, after several times of going from obey the laws, I obey your grandma, to grandma, I'm here to see you, the weight of the law finally became heavy in the hearts of every British wizard. So now that everyone sees this situation, their mentality has gradually changed from I'm going to fight, run to I'm here to be brave. Look at it, and even there will be a moment when the other party calms down. A little disappointed, well, just a little bit really. Although the extra scenes could not be seen, the movie was still exciting and everyone looked at the screen in front of them again because of the episode just now. Many people missed the process of New Salem, the previous anti-wizard organization, seeking support from the newspaper but being rejected. But obviously the wizards didn't want to see them. Tina took Newt and Jacob back to her home, where besides her there was Tina's sister Queenie. I have to say that Queenie's appearance is very good, and, how should I put it, Queenie doesn't have the air of a social animal that is common in adults and has experienced the ravages of work. She looks smart and lively, and many viewers can't bear it. His eyes widen after seeing her younger sister for a long time. Mrs. Tina, who was just feeling sad, heard a whistle coming from somewhere in the screening room, and couldn't help but have a question mark above her head at that time. Mrs. Tina held the wand in her arms. Fortunately, Neutra was pulled quickly enough, and the overly excited wizard seemed to have forgotten the female companion beside him, and was directly dragged out of the screening room by his ears. Seeing this attitude, I don't want to watch the next movie, and I have to go home to solve the problem. After all, real person PK in public may be reported unable to see the follow-up. The audience in the screening room couldn't help but sigh with regret again. And then put the scene behind them and looked at the screen with bright eyes because Queenie is changing clothes on screen. The expressions on the audience's faces were almost identical to Jacob's. What is Adam doing, MRS? Tina said she couldn't accept it, but isn't this what happened back then? Newt expressed confusion. Then you can't take pictures of everything, right? Isn't this pretty? Queenie just changed into a coat, not underwear. Newt didn't think it was anything at all, and he didn't understand Mrs. Tina's mentality of having her own cabbage taken away. Fortunately, everyone woke up from Queenie's beauty, because Queenie can actually use legilimency, and she seems to be using legilimency on other people regularly. At this point, even if Queenie showed off her beautiful skills in making food using silent spells, people still couldn't help but feel guilty when they saw her. Even that sweet smile seemed to have a deeper meaning. These people are so shameless. They act as if they can choose whatever they want. Harry was shocked at what a weird idea he had, but it's really rude to treat other people with legilimency casually. A person can know what you are thinking at any time, and so on. Just thinking about that possibility, Ron's expression was not particularly natural. Maybe she can control it, like a natural telepath, like Professor Gandalf. Harry didn't think it was anything. Maybe because there were too many people he came into contact with who knew legilimency. Professor Dumbledore, Professor Gandalf, Professor Snape, and Voldemort, and all of these people are masters of legilimency. No, Harry, a natural telepath is a very, very rare talent, even rarer than Parseltongue. Ron realized that Harry might still be lacking in this less common sense, referring to common cognitions that would not be used at all, so he educated him. Even Parseltongue has been passed down from generation to generation in the Gaunt family. Well, the inheritance is broken now. Ron changed his words in embarrassment, and then continued, but there may not be one born telepathizer even in 100 years, and she should be about the same age as Professor Gandalf, but she's American, right, Harry? Couldn't help but said, the world is such a big place. It's not surprising that there will be one in the United Kingdom every 100 years and one in the United States every 100 years. This is a bit arrogant, but I have to say that it makes sense. The world is full of wonders, and this sentence can solve many problems. Ron couldn't think of a rebuttal for a while, but he still insisted on his opinion. Anyway, I think she is not a born telekinesis master, but a witch who can't help but keep using it after mastering legerdemons. I'll make a bet with you. No problem. What's the bet? After listening to Ron's popular science, Harry knew that natural telepaths were extremely rare, and he also knew that the probability of losing a bet was much greater than the probability of winning, but the answer has not yet been revealed, and the movie may not even go out of its way to explain that Queenie is not a natural telepath, just like the movie doesn't go out of its way to explain that a person is not a Parselmouth, and with so much money in his treasury, it's not like he can't afford to lose it. Is that in Harry's character to back off now in this situation? Ron thought for a while, it would be pointless to gamble with their relationship. Why not? Whoever loses the bet gets to wear Ginny's dress and dance in Hogsmeade. Let Fred choose which one to wear, Harry? ? I have to say that Ron's words were indeed beyond Harry's expectations. He was not afraid of betting money, but betting on this, surrender, and lose half. If you don't dare, I'll treat you to supper tonight and forget about it. When Ron saw this, he waved his hand mockingly, and Harry became furious on the spot. Can this be tolerated? Ginny only has a few dresses anyway. It's a bet. Hiss, watching Ron dig a hole, fill in the soil and step on his feet. Adam took a breath of air and then touched his chin. It seems like it's time to give Ginny some dresses. What style should I give? Chapter 397. How many magical creatures can a full suitcase contain? While Ron was tirelessly digging holes for himself, Grindelwald on the screen was also digging holes for Dumbledore. In the corner of the screening room, Professor Grindelwald suddenly felt his nose itchy for some reason. Oh, of course, now everyone doesn't know that Graves is Grindelwald in disguise, and they don't know that Credence is a member of the Dumbledore family due to the disgust for the anti-wizard organization. Although this period of the environment is very dark, everyone did not suspect that the two were villains. Instead, it felt more like the top leaders of the Magic Congress were secretly developing undercover agents within the anti-wizard organization. Some people even secretly cheered for Graves, hoping that he could defeat the anti-wizard organization. Professor Grindelwald, who was not far from the man and therefore heard it, if it was to defeat that organization, he did do it, but the process and the inside story may be a little different from what you imagined. The camera turns, and the four people who are having dinner at Tina's house are in two different worlds. Queenie and Jacob are talking happily, even as if they are already talking, while Tina and Newt are a little embarrassed, but they empathize with each other's situation. And they feel like bosom friends when they exchange eyes at this moment. The state of the two pairs of people sitting opposite each other also reflects their personalities and attitudes towards emotions. One pair is mature and reserved, and the other pair is innocent and open. There is a saying that a person's personality determines his life. Although this sentence is a bit too absolute, it is not wrong that personality will affect life. The experience between the two couples afterwards is largely due to their respective personalities. Mrs. Tina and Newt did not think so much. The scene of the four people having dinner together for the first time on the screen touched them a lot. The last time they had dinner together was decades ago, but looking back, their first dinner together seemed to have just happened yesterday. As the two watched, their eyes became wet again unconsciously. After dinner, Newt and Jacob stayed at the sisters' home. Fortunately, there was a separate guest room, even a twin room. After Tina brought them a cup of hot cocoa and said goodnight, Newt, who seemed to be pretending to be dead in bed, suddenly turned over from the bed, wearing a windbreaker for going out. Mrs. Tina, who was still immersed in sadness, saw this and her breathing became disordered. She was choking and couldn't help but hiccuping in the surprised eyes of the audience and Jacob. Newt quickly opened the box, and then walked in. Puff, there were scattered sounds of water spraying, low curses and spells from all over the movie. Because of Jacob's action of drinking hot cocoa just now, many viewers with drinks in their hands also drank a sip, and the result was, haha, just. After cleaning up the front, several viewers took another sip of drinks to smooth their throats, and suddenly heard Jacob's shocked exclamation, puff. The audience members cleaned up the wet areas of the drinks in silence. Seeing that 1/5 of the drinks were gone in less than a minute, their faces suddenly turned black regardless of the few people. Most of the audience's attention was on Newt's box at this time. Although everyone knew that Newt's box must have a traceless extension spell, otherwise it would not be possible to fit so many magical animals, but, is it still a bit too exaggerated to let a whole person walk in? Then they saw Newt stretched out a hand from the box and beckoned Jacob to go in with him. The audience was immediately excited. Was he beckoning Jacob? This was beckoning them. Facing such a magical scene, Jacob obviously couldn't help but be curious, so he silently put down the hot cocoa and bedtime reading in his hand, walked in, walked in, walked. Jacob looked at his waist stuck in the box, and his expression was a little hopeless. The audience couldn't help laughing, and Newt and Mrs. Tina couldn't help but smile. The bitterness of the passing of the old friend is lingering, but the endless happy memories can still dilute this bitterness. After all, they had so much happiness in the past. After jumping a few times in place while holding the box, Jacob finally entered smoothly. To be more precise, he fell into the box, and the audience finally got a glimpse of the space inside the box. To be honest, everyone had imagined the huge space in the box, but the most exaggerated thing was that it was filled with various magical animals. Even when Newt walked in, everyone just thought that the space in the box was just bigger than they imagined. This is also the reason why everyone felt that something was wrong when Newt's magical animals ran out before, but they didn't take it too seriously. In their concept, how big can the space of a suitcase be, and how many and how big magical animals can be stuffed into it? But after seeing the situation in the box, the audience couldn't help but swear this MF is the inside of the suitcase. So Newt brought her house with him when he went out. The inside of the box was neither bare nor filled with magical creatures. Rather than calling it the inside of a box, everyone was more willing to believe that it was a workshop, a workbench filled with various tools and books, a whole row of cabinets against the wall. There were even potted plants of various sizes and lighting fixtures inside. At this moment, a few viewers could not help but frown. Can these spaces really accommodate those magical animals, nifflers, invisible beasts, murder rats, billywig worms? Well, these magical animals are not big, and they can really fit in if they squeeze in. Newt asked Jacob to sit down, and then shuttled back and forth in the workshop to prepare medicine for him to treat murder rat's bites. During this time, everyone also saw the unknown side of Newt. The curled winged demon that pounced on his face almost in an instant scared many viewers, and then everyone saw the smug smirk on Newt's face after the prank was successful, and the question mark on his head almost broke through the ceiling. You are not me. You are actually such a Professor Scamander? Exclamation mark. For a moment, everyone didn't know which one of the curled winged demon and Newt's true face was more stimulating to them. After a little prank, Newt opened a door and called Jacob to follow. Everyone thought that was the way out of the suitcase, but when the camera followed Jacob out of the door, the audience exclaimed like muggles, "What is this? How is this possible? No way, my Merlin!" Although the content was varied, these exclamations showed the shock in the audience's hearts without exception. At this moment, they really wanted to know if this scene in the movie was real. Look what they saw. That was a sky with clouds, and it was thundering and raining in the sky, and there was a thunderbird flying in the clouds. Can this really be expanded with a space in a suitcase? For a moment, the audience was in a state of doubt about life. This is a wizard, then what am I? A squib? Chapter 398. Capturing escaped magical animals. Progress +1+1. Just when the audience was cursing in their hearts, Newt introduced the Thunderbird in front of him to Jacob. This was the reason why he came to New York. He saved the Thunderbird from the poachers and wanted to send him home just when everyone was moved. Everyone heard Newt holding the Thunderbird and whispering that it was a good thing that the Thunderbird didn't run away. Everyone who was still moved. Exclamation mark. That's right, the space in this box is so big that there's even a Thunderbird. How many magical animals ran away before? Exclamation mark. At this time, the audience with good memory suddenly remembered that one of the witnesses who surrounded Jacob's house claimed that he saw a big hippopotamus. Originally, everyone thought that it was an exaggeration by the other party to attract attention. Now thinking back, looking at the horned camel summoned by Newt, maybe he was telling the truth at that time. Newt looked at the magical animals appearing one by one on the screen, and a kind smile appeared on his face. Unconsciously, the magical animals he protected and rescued at that time, even if they are not dead, are now living in their own habitats. He has not seen them for a long time. At this time, a pink bird suddenly flashed on the screen, and a somewhat puzzled voice came from the screening room. Umbridge, the Screening room was strangely silent for a few seconds. Then, those viewers who knew the evil bird looked at the evil bird again, and they couldn't help but have a disgusting smile in their minds. Audience, Cap, asshole. Why did you say that? There is no going back now. Then, Newt and Jacob fed the magical animals. In the process, everyone also saw more magical animals and saw how big the world in this suitcase is. However, after feeding the moon beast, Jacob found a separate space, where the environment was ice and snow, and there seemed to be no other magical animals in it except for the dark cloud-like thing in the space. What is that? Many viewers couldn't help but think of this question. However, every time a magical animal appeared, there would be a knowledgeable wizard sharing knowledge with everyone, but this time no one spoke up, so Newt was the only one left to explain it to everyone. But Newt only mentioned that it was an obscurus and took Jacob away from their obscurus. The audience looked at each other and found that no one seemed to know what it was. There are too few records about obscurus and obscurus. Most wizards will never even hear about these things in their lifetime, so of course they don't know. In the movie, after feeding the magical animals, Newt asked Jacob, a local, if there was any place in New York that was suitable for the environment that the lost magical animals liked. During the feeding process just now, Newt was also counting which magical animals were missing. Jacob originally thought that it was not moral for them to leave secretly like this. After all, the Tina sisters treated them very well, but Newt revealed a cruel truth to him. No matter how well they took care of him now, when they found that his injuries had healed, they would cast oblivion on him, making him forget all memories of wizards and magic. Jacob was stunned at the time, and this magical experience flashed through his mind one by one, and then agreed to take Newt to the environment that suited the preferences of the lost magical animals. The two originally planned to go to Central Park, but on the way they found some shiny things, and vaguely formed a path. No need to remind, everyone remembered the very cute little guy with a very high presence, the Sniff who loved shiny things. Newt followed the trace all the way forward, and suddenly found that he seemed to have seen a flash of. Taking 2 steps back, Newt turned his head and looked at the Sniff, who stretched out his hand to the jewelry display stand, and then under the gaze of Newt's parent child, the Sniff turned around and ran, shattered into pieces. Newt took out his wand and rushed into the jewelry store. During the capture, the small Niffler jumped up and down in the jewelry store, and Newt followed him, climbing and jumping all the way. The whole process was a mess, and the sounds of various metals, crystals, glass, and porcelain falling to the ground were endless. This scene, coupled with Jacob's complex expression outside the door, who couldn't go in to help but couldn't turn around and leave, almost made the whole theater laugh. Well, it's strange to say that among these people, Newt's grandson laughed the loudest, most rampant, and most persistent until everyone's laughter almost stopped. He still couldn't stop laughing, and Mrs. Tina looked at him with a different look because Newt made too much noise in the process of catching the Niffler. When he caught the Niffler, the police had already arrived. Fortunately, a lion that broke in at this time attracted the attention of the police, and Newt took this opportunity to operate with Jacob and ran away. Newt was still very excited at this time. He didn't expect that lions in New York could actually run directly on the streets. However, Jacob's expression at this time was obviously more powerful than any words. At least New York was not like this before you came. Anyway, a Niffler was caught, and they also found that there was indeed a magical animal they were looking for in Central Park, which was a female Erumpent. Seeing Newt smear the musk of the horned beast on their wrists, Harry and Ron couldn't help but stare wide-eyed, and some dead memories suddenly began to revive. Could it be that Professor Scamander is maybe, after all, this is what Professor Scamander taught us? This one of the dances that Professor Scamander couldn't demonstrate to them in person because of his old age, can actually see the real version. However, after the horned beast's courtship dance, just when everyone was surprised to find that the method was really useful, Jacob made some noise because of a sea lion, attracting the attention of the horned beast, and Newt was about to chase him, and the monkey hiding behind him took away his wand. The next moment he pulled out his wand. Mrs. Tina looked at Newt beside her in surprise. I have to say, this part is so wonderful. Newt is a wizard, and he is also a powerful one. But he was taken away by an ordinary monkey with his bare hands. He also wanted to exchange his wand with a branch. She arrived a little late, and only saw them putting the Erumpent into the box, and didn't know about this part. Newt moved his neck uncomfortably and avoided Mrs. Tina's sight. Well, I don't know much about animals that are not magical creatures. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 399. Why does Dumbledore appreciate you so much? After catching Newt and Jacob in the suitcase, Tina locked the suitcase and rushed to the MACUSA. However, as soon as she entered the Serious Crimes Investigation Department, Tina was frightened by the people inside the cabinets and desks where the files were originally stored disappeared. Members of the International Confederation of Wizards from the magic ministries of various countries gathered together to question the MACUSA, which was about to expose wizards to muggles. The communication was suddenly interrupted, and everyone looked at Tina, who broke in, which made Tina, who wanted to speak, go blank on the spot. Did she interrupt another important meeting? However, it was too late to leave now. Under the question of President Serafina, Tina still told her purpose. However, she didn't know that a report directly involved them in another matter and put them in a more dangerous situation than the punishment they had imagined before. Looking at the three people being taken away in the movie, Mrs. Tina slowly clenched one hand, and then it was suddenly covered by a slightly larger hand. That's not your fault, Newt looked at Mrs. Tina gently. You didn't know that this would happen, too. Be honest, Newt really didn't think there was anything wrong with Tina reporting him. After all, he did violate the laws of the American Magic Congress and smuggled a box of magical animals. If nothing went wrong as planned, it would be fine, but those magical animals sneaked out, and Tina reported him as a duty. In the original situation, he would at most be locked up, and then wait for his brother in the British Ministry of Magic to extradite him. The only thing he needed to worry about was that those magical animals might be harmed. Who would have thought that Grindelwald would come out halfway and take this opportunity to throw the pot of Obscurus on their heads, which led to so many subsequent events at this time. Grindelwald in the movie was already interrogating Newt. Of course, no audience has discovered that Graves is Grindelwald yet. The pattern of the Deathly Hallows on his pocket can only be said to be an Easter egg that may be discovered when you look back. Facing Newt, Graves told Newt about his past when he was expelled from Hogwarts because of an incident involving magical animals that endangered the lives of others. In response, a professor defended him in every possible way, but ultimately failed to prevent Newt from being expelled. Just when everyone couldn't help but wonder what exactly caused Newt to be expelled, Graves looked at Newt and suddenly changed the subject. So, why does Dumbledore appreciate you so much, audience? Although this sentence tells us that the person who defended Newt in every possible way was Professor Dumbledore, which made them more certain that there was something else behind the incident. But is there a little problem with the logic of this question, Professor? Dumbledore also couldn't help but put a question mark. He turned his head and looked at Grindelwald beside him, and the silence was deafening. Facing Professor Dumbledore's silent gaze, Professor Grindelwald looked calm, but couldn't help but secretly wondered why Adam, this kid, spread everything. He's already old. Doesn't he have any face? You still have face, Adam was shocked when he saw this idea. Professor, it was not like this when you gave me the memory of your love affair with Professor Dumbledore. Graves in the movie seemed to just mention it casually, and then led the topic to Newt's release of magical animals. Although Newt argued that he did not deliberately release those magical animals, and did not have the idea of causing a war between wizards and muggles, but when Graves took out the Obscurus in Newt's suitcase, all the excuses became futile. When Newt just came out of the suitcase, facing everyone's accusation that it was his magical animal that killed the muggle, he said that the injury came from the Obscurus and Newt happened to have an Obscurus. However, Newt defended himself again. This was an Obscurus that had lost its host, and after he managed to imprison it, it could not go anywhere and could not cause damage. According to Adam's research, this is indeed the case. After losing the possessed wizard, creatures like the spiritual dimension of the Obscurus will no longer have any intersection with muggles or even wizards, so it is useless after losing its host. Graves, or Grindelwald, has no deep understanding of magical animals at all. He looks down on those creatures that have magical abilities but can only use simple, instinctive magic. He is more interested in those profound and complex magic. It is this contempt that led to Grindelwald's loss of the Blood Alliance later. Of course, that is the story later. Useless. Newt keenly noticed a wrongness in Graves' words. When a person says that something is useless, then he must have thought of using it. Not to mention that through the reactions of the people in the American Magic Congress just now, they have not found the Obscurus for hundreds of years. Who would think of using the Obscurus? Newt's observation ability is quite sharp, otherwise he can't take care of so many magical animals with his love for magical animals. He doesn't have the amazing frankness of Hagrid. This point was also reflected later. When Newt heard Professor Dumbledore say that he could not fight against Grindelwald, he noticed the blood alliance on Grindelwald at %U0026 Graves, who was found to have a flaw in his words, did not respond to Newt's words, but instead talked about Newt's crime. No matter what, it was a fact that Newt brought an Obscurus to New York. As for Newt's statement that an Obscurus without a host would not hurt people, who can prove it? The harm of the Obscurus is well known to everyone, and the Magical Congress of the United States of America cannot verify a recognized fact based on the one-sided statement of Newt, a criminal, not to mention that only Graves presided over the interrogation and conviction of the two. He quickly sentenced Newt and Tina to death in a few words and executed them immediately. The way the Magical Congress of the United States of America executes the death penalty is the death pool, an execution facility filled with death potion. During the execution, the staff of the Congress will extract the good memories of the prisoner to lure the other party into the death pool. As for the death potion inside, it is a corrosive potion that works particularly well on magical substances. It can also corrode non-magical substances, so it is extremely troublesome to store and has very limited value. Thanks to the botricle that insisted on sticking to Newt before, Newt was able to unlock the shackles on his hands and fight back to knock out the two executioners at the same time. Queenie, who sensed that Tina was in danger, intercepted Jacob, who was about to be taken to cast the forgetting spell, and found Newt's wands and Newt's suitcase in Graves' office. Chapter 400. Jacob, do you understand the value of World War I veterans? When the audience saw Jacob kick open the door that Queenie couldn't open with the unlocking charm, they were shocked. It just opened like that. Even Newt and Mrs. Tina couldn't help but marvel at this scene. Later, when they met up, they knew that Queenie and Jacob got the wand and suitcase from Graves' office, but they didn't ask specifically how they opened the door. This is a kind of knowledge and view obstacle, because usually there is only one way to break the lock, the unlocking charm. When the lock can't be opened, the wizard will only want to use a more advanced unlocking charm, but Jacob participated in World War I. He is familiar with violently breaking the door when there is no normal way to open it. It's just a small wooden door. Is it necessary to be so troublesome? Anyway, the door was opened, and Newt saved Tina, who was about to be swallowed by the potion. Although the two did not have wands in their hands, they still defeated the auras they met along the way with the help of the winged demon that Newt carried with him. Tina, who had escaped death with the help of the winged demon before, could not help but change her previous prejudice against magical animals after being saved by the winged demon. Again, this is not a source of trouble that will cause disasters, but a little cutie who saves lives. Winged demon mainly feeds on human brains in the wild. Shiji, the two who escaped, happened to run into Queenie and Jacob, who were looking for them, so the three of them entered the suitcase, and Queenie, the only one of the four who still had a visible identity, picked up the suitcase and led everyone away from the headquarters of the Magic Congress on the other side. Graves found Credence again and asked him how he was doing with Credence's business. He foresaw a child, a very important child, a child who could have a decisive influence on the future. Although he saw that the child had an intersection with Credence, he could not see the child's appearance, so he arranged for Credence to help him find it. Of course, the power of the Obscurus in Credence was also one of the reasons why he chose Credence. Before this, no one had discovered that there was anything wrong with Graves. Although everyone was suspicious when Newt discovered the problem before, there seemed to be no other evidence to prove that Graves had a problem except for that little grammatical error. On the contrary, between Graves and Credence, everyone had discovered that Credence's mother abused him. In addition, Credence's mother was the leader of an anti-wizard organization, so everyone was naturally more favorable to Graves and his men. But now it's different. After comforting Credence, Graves put a necklace on Credence and told him to touch the necklace with his hand when he found the child, and he would rush over after sensing it. As the camera pulled away, everyone saw that the pendant part of the necklace was a familiar symbol of the Deathly Hallows. Today, most wizards in the British wizarding world have watched it directly, and the rest of the wizards have basically learned about the Boy Who Lived series indirectly. Who doesn't know that Grindelwald's symbol is the symbol of the Deathly Hallows? Graves is Grindelwald's man. This fact made the audience gasp. He was a senior member of the MACUSA, and he quietly joined Grindelwald. Was it the Imperious Curse? However, the truth was more exciting than the audience imagined. Who could have expected that Grindelwald, who is wanted by the Ministry of Magic of various countries, would disguise himself and enter the MACUSA, and replace a senior executive quietly without being discovered? After Graves left, Credence's attachment to Graves' embrace made the audience feel cold in their hearts. This was completely different from Voldemort's rule by force. It is well known that in fairy tales, the righteous side often relies on love and bondage to defeat the evil side, but now the evil side has also begun to use love and bondage to win people's hearts. How can it be defeated? In a suffocating silence, Professor Grindelwald swallowed his saliva, then laughed awkwardly. It seems that my teaching work may not be as smooth as before. Before, everyone knew that Grindelwald was a very dangerous criminal and dark wizard, but after all, they only learned about it from newspapers and other channels. After all, they did not see it with their own eyes or hear it with their own ears, and they did not have enough real feelings in the final analysis. Grindelwald had very little influence on the British wizarding world, and Dumbledore was not the only one bound by the Blood Alliance, so those parents put their minds at ease about Grindelwald after discovering that Grindelwald not only did not show any harm, but was very popular with students. But it was different after the movie was broadcast. Seeing the impact of Grindelwald on the American wizarding world with their own eyes, parents would be wary of Grindelwald again. As for Grindelwald being popular with students, that's even more terrifying. Look at Grindelwald in the movie. Credence was so old that he was scared by him and was devoted to him. How could those young wizards who had just entered Hogwarts resist Grindelwald's influence? Who knows which of his words are true and which are false? Regarding the future that Professor Grindelwald will face after the movie is broadcast, Professor Dumbledore responded with a cold snort in a very cold and ruthless manner, Ossieing. This, Professor Grindelwald sighed, and it was not known whether he was helpless or lamenting the decline of morals in order to find the last lost magical creature, the invisible beast Dougal, bird snake, that Newt talked to on the boat at the beginning. Tina took them to find her informant when she was in Auror. After entering the underground bar of wizards, the two future couples sat down at the seats and the bar to communicate. It can only be said that in that atmosphere, coupled with the fact that Tina and her sister changed into long dresses, the eyes of the two men were obviously a little bit wrong. So, the way you looked at me was wrong so early. It was only at this time that Mrs. Tina realized that at that time, she was only thinking about catching the magical creatures and investigating the murderer of the Muggle Obscurus to clear herself of suspicion. She only realized later that she had actually been attracted to Newt at that time. Hearing Tina's words, Newt couldn't help but blush and lower his head, but still spoke honestly. You were dressed beautifully that day, just as the atmosphere between the two began to float with pink bubbles. The screen was in a mess. Tina's informant was a goblin, and the greed of goblins will never disappoint people. It had informed the Magic Congress before trading with Tina and the others, wanting to make money on both sides, but it was knocked down by Jacob's unexpected punch. After drinking a few glasses of wine, Jacob once again proved the value of his participation in World War I. Although he was stabbed in the back, Newt still successfully got the news of the invisible beast, and several people directly apparated to Fifth Avenue at the same time. Credence also advanced the progress of the mission. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.